I'm Danielle, 33 years old, and on Christmas Eve, after spending 3 days decorating every inch of my parents' house, I walked into the dining room and discovered my place card had vanished from the table. 25 relatives were already seated. Candles flickered in crystal holders I had polished myself. Champagne sparkled in glasses I had arranged that morning. The whole room glowed with warmth and holiday magic, all of it built by my hands over 72 exhausting hours. I scanned the table for my name. It wasn't there. My chair, the one I had sat in for 33 years of family dinners, now had a different place card. Bradley Harrison, my sister Victoria's fiancé. I circled the entire table, checking every seat. 25 names, 25 places, none of them mine. My mother looked up from her champagne, and her eyes held no warmth, no apology, nothing resembling love. "There's no place for useless people at this table," she said. Her voice carried across the silent room. "You can eat in the kitchen if you're hungry." No one spoke, no one defended me. 25 people witnessed my humiliation and chose silence. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I didn't retreat to the kitchen like I had done 1,000 times before. Instead, I reached into my bag and pulled out a manila envelope. I walked to the head of the table where my father sat, and I placed it directly on his plate, covering his untouched prime rib. "Merry Christmas, Dad," I said. "I finally understand why you never saw me as your daughter." The DNA results inside that envelope answered questions I had been asking my whole life. But they also raised one bigger question, one that would tear this family apart before dessert was served. To understand why I smiled instead of cried, you need to know what the previous 72 hours looked like. 3 days before Christmas, I pulled into my parents' driveway with a trunk full of decorations. My mother had called the week before with her usual demands. "Victoria is announcing her engagement on Christmas Eve," she said. "The house needs to be perfect. Arrive early. You know what to do." I knew exactly what to do. I had been doing it my entire life. For 3 days, I worked alone. I hung lights on the porch until my fingers went numb from the cold. I trimmed the 12-foot tree in the living room, carefully placing each ornament according to my mother's precise instructions. I arranged garlands on every mantel, wrapped ribbon around every banister, set every table with china I had to wash by hand because my mother didn't trust the dishwasher. I cooked half the Christmas dinner. Prime rib, roasted vegetables, 3 different pies. My grandmother's famous dinner rolls from a recipe I had memorized as a child. The kitchen smelled like rosemary and butter and everything that should mean home. Victoria arrived on day 2, fresh from a spa weekend with her fiancé. She walked through the house inspecting my work like a queen surveying her servants. "The garland is crooked," she announced, pointing at the staircase. "Fix it before the guests arrive." She didn't offer to help. She never did. While I was hanging lights on the 3rd day, I found a box of old ornaments in the attic. Inside, buried beneath decades of Christmas memories, I discovered something that made me pause. A Christmas card in a faded red envelope, elegant handwriting across the front. I opened it carefully. To Lydia, it read, "Merry Christmas, my love. I'll wait for you forever. Daniel, 1990. The year before I was born." I didn't know anyone named Daniel. I had never heard my mother mention him. But something about that card made my stomach tighten. I slipped it into my pocket without knowing why. That night, I found something else. While looking for extra napkins in my mother's study, I noticed a photograph I had never seen before. My mother, young and beautiful, standing with a man who was not my father. They were laughing, his arm around her waist, her head tilted toward him like he was the only person in the world. "Summer 1990, someone had written on the back. Nothing else. No names, no explanation. I photographed it with my phone and put it back exactly where I found it. I should have known then. A woman who erases you from ornaments will eventually erase you from the table. Christmas Eve arrived with the false promise of celebration. I dressed carefully in a burgundy gown I had made myself, though no one in my family knew I could sew anything more complicated than a button. I carried the pecan pie I had baked from my grandmother's recipe, the crust golden and perfect. The house looked magnificent. Every light I had hung cast a warm glow. Every ornament I had placed caught the candlelight. Every flower I had arranged perfumed the air with holiday elegance. My work, my hands, my exhaustion made visible. And none of it mattered. The moment I entered the dining room, I saw the empty space where I should have been. I walked the length of the table slowly, reading each place card. Richard Foster at the head, Lydia Foster beside him, Victoria Foster Wells in the place of honor, Bradley Harrison next to her, aunts, uncles, cousins, distant relatives I barely recognized, everyone accounted for, everyone except me. I watched their faces as I searched. Uncle Thomas cleared his throat and looked away. Cousin Meredith whispered something to her husband. Old Aunt Patricia clutched her pearls and studied her plate. Victoria sipped champagne with a satisfied smile, watching me hunt for a seat that didn't exist. And my father. Richard Foster sat at the head of his table, jaw tight, eyes fixed on nothing. He knew I was there. He chose not to see me. But there was one face that looked different. My Aunt Margaret, my mother's younger sister, sat near the middle of the table. When our eyes met, I saw something I didn't expect. Not cruelty like the others. Not amusement or indifference. Fear. She looked afraid. Her lips moved slightly, and I could have sworn she mouthed the words, "I'm sorry." Before I could react, my mother spoke. "Oh, Danielle." Her voice dripped with false sweetness. "I meant to tell you. We needed Bradley's seat for the engagement announcement. Surely you understand." I looked at her. The woman who had given birth to me. The woman who had spent 33 years making me feel like a mistake she couldn't quite erase. "Mom," I said quietly, "where exactly should I sit?" Lydia waved her hand dismissively. "The kitchen is fine. You've always preferred it there anyway." A few relatives laughed nervously. Victoria's smile widened. The room waited for me to crumble, to apologize, to disappear into the kitchen where the help belonged. I reached into my bag. My mother's eyes followed my hand, and I saw something flicker across her face. Not guilt. She wasn't capable of guilt. But fear. The same fear I had seen in Margaret's eyes. She didn't know what I had, but she knew it was something. I pulled out the manila envelope slowly, deliberately, thick, official, undeniable. I walked toward the head of the table. Each step felt like crossing a bridge I had spent 33 years searching for. Guests parted to let me pass, confused and curious. I stopped at my father's chair and looked down at the man I had called Dad for 33 years. He looked up at me with the same expression I had seen 1,000 times. Irritation, dismissal, absence. I placed the envelope on his plate. "Merry Christmas, Dad." My voice carried through the silent room. "I finally understand why you never saw me as your daughter." Richard's face went pale. "What is this?" "Open it," I said. "Everyone should hear what's inside." My mother moved fast, reaching for the envelope. "This is ridiculous. Danielle, stop this tantrum immediately. Don't touch it, Mom." I kept my voice steady. "It's not for you, though you already know what's inside, don't you?" Our eyes met. 33 years of unspoken truth suspended between us. My father's hands trembled as he broke the seal. He pulled out the documents, his eyes scanning the pages. I watched his face as understanding dawned. First confusion, then recognition, then something that looked almost like relief. "Where did you get this?" His voice was barely a whisper. "Grandma Eleanor," I said. "She left me the truth you've been hiding my entire life. Since you seem to be having trouble reading, let me help." I took the document from his shaking hands and turned to face the room. 25 witnesses to 33 years of cruelty. "This is an official DNA analysis from GeneTech Laboratories," I announced. My voice was clear, carrying to every corner. Subject A, Richard Allen Foster. Subject B, Danielle Marie Foster. I paused, letting the silence build. Genetic comparison results, 0% match. I heard gasps. I saw Victoria's champagne glass freeze halfway to her lips. Conclusion: Richard Allen Foster is excluded as the biological father of Danielle Marie Foster. The room erupted into whispers. I pulled out the photograph I had found in my mother's study. She also left me this. Our mother, summer of 1990, with a man named Daniel, 6 months before I was born. I held it up so everyone could see. My mother in a sundress laughing, a man's arm around her waist. A man who was clearly not Richard. The whispers grew louder. I always thought Danielle looked different. Lydia had an affair? Before the wedding? Richard knew? My father sat motionless, staring at the photograph. You knew, I said softly, didn't you? He didn't answer. Grandma Eleanor told me everything. You've known since I was 3 years old. You did a blood type test. The results were impossible. Still, he said nothing. You knew I wasn't your daughter, and you let her treat me like garbage for 30 years. You watched her punish me for a sin I didn't commit. Richard finally spoke, his voice barely audible. I always suspected. From the day you were born, you didn't look like me, didn't act like me. But I told myself. Told yourself what? That if I ignored it, it would go away. That pretending was easier than knowing. I thought the worst was over. I thought there was nothing left to reveal. I was wrong. Aunt Margaret stood up. Not hesitantly this time. Deliberately, fully, like a woman who had finally made a decision. Lydia, she said, and her voice rang through the silent room. It's time to stop lying. To everyone. My mother's face went from flushed to gray. Margaret, sit down. No, I've been sitting down for 32 years. I've been keeping your secrets because you threatened me. Because you knew things about my life I couldn't afford to have exposed. Margaret turned to me. But your grandmother freed me from that, Danielle. Before she died, she told me it was time. And she gave me proof. Margaret! My mother's voice was desperate now. There's more, my aunt said, ignoring her. More than the affair. More than the DNA. Something Danielle still doesn't know. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. Something about why Daniel really left. And what your mother did to make sure he never came back. But first, let me take you back to the summer I turned 22. The summer my mother's heart stopped, and so did my future. Because that's where this story really begins. 11 years ago, I was someone else entirely. I was 22, a junior at Parsons School of Design in New York City, and I believed the future was something I could hold in my hands. I lived in a tiny shared apartment in Brooklyn with 2 roommates who understood that rent was optional, but dreams were not. I worked part-time at a fabric store in the garment district, surrounded by bolts of silk and wool and cotton that whispered possibilities every time I touched them. I survived on ramen and coffee and the absolute certainty that I was building something real. My sketchbooks were filled with designs that kept me awake at night. My walls were covered with inspiration, torn pages from magazines and fabric swatches and photographs of women wearing clothes that made them look powerful. I was on the dean's list for 4 consecutive semesters. I had won the Freshman Design Award and the Sophomore Innovation Prize. My professor, Dr. Marion Chen, had called me the most promising student she had seen in 15 years. I had just been selected for a summer internship at a major fashion house in Manhattan. My final collection concept had been approved. Phoenix Rising, I called it. Designs inspired by transformation and rebirth, by the idea that something beautiful could emerge from destruction. I had mapped out my entire future. Graduate, work under an established designer for 5 years, launch my own label by 30. I had a plan. I had talent. I had everything I needed to become someone. What I didn't have was a family that wanted me to succeed. June 15th. I remember the exact date because it was the day my life split in 2. I was in the design studio hand-stitching a bodice for my portfolio piece. The fabric was white silk, delicate and unforgiving, and I was so focused on getting the stitches perfect that I almost didn't hear my phone ring. Then I saw the name on the screen. Dad. My father never called. Ever. In 3 years of college, not once. I answered with my heart already racing. Danielle, his voice was flat, controlled, businesslike. Your mother had a heart attack this morning. Massive. She's in surgery now. I dropped my needle and pricked my finger. A small bloom of blood appeared on the white silk, spreading slowly like a warning. How bad is it? Bad. The doctors say she needs bypass surgery, then months of recovery, physical therapy, someone to care for her full time. He paused, and in that silence I heard everything he wasn't saying. Victoria has her bar exam in 2 months. She can't leave Boston. Another pause. We need you to come home, Danielle. I thought about my internship starting in 3 weeks, my final collection due in the fall. The future I had built brick by brick for 3 years. For how long? However long it takes. I tried to save my future. I called my academic advisor first, explaining the situation, asking about medical leave, deferred enrollment. The answer came quick and cold. You've already used your 1 semester leave for your grandmother's illness freshman year. There's nothing more we can do. I called the internship next. Explained, begged, promised to work twice as hard when I returned. We're sorry, the voice on the phone said, but we need someone who can commit. The position has been filled. I called Professor Chen last. She was the one person who had always believed in me, who had seen something in my work worth nurturing. Danielle, she said softly, I understand family emergencies. But if you leave now, you lose your spot in the senior showcase. That's the industry's first look at you. Can I work remotely? I asked, desperate. Send in designs? Fashion isn't remote, sweetheart. It's hands-on. It's being here, in the room, fighting for your vision. A long silence. I'm so sorry. I really am. You had such a bright future. Had, not have, had, past tense, already gone. I packed up my dream that night, took down the inspiration board I had spent 2 years building, folded my half-finished designs into a suitcase I knew I would never open. My roommate Jessie watched with tears in her eyes. You'll come back, right? You'll finish? I couldn't answer. The bus ride to Westbrook took 4 hours. I watched the city disappear behind me and thought about every sacrifice I had already made to get to Parsons. Working 3 jobs in high school to save money, applying for scholarships my parents never helped with, building a future alone, brick by brick. And now, 1 phone call, and it was gone. I went straight to the hospital from the bus station, suitcase in one hand, cold coffee in the other. I hadn't slept in 36 hours. The waiting room smelled like antiseptic and fear. My father sat in a plastic chair reading the Wall Street Journal like it was any other Tuesday. Victoria was there too, typing on her laptop, probably billing hours even in a hospital. And in the corner, hands folded in her lap, watching everyone with those sharp eyes that missed nothing, sat my grandmother Eleanor. When I walked in, only she stood up. She wrapped me in a hug that smelled like lavender and safety. I know what you're giving up, sweetheart, she whispered. I know exactly what this costs. She held my face in both hands and looked into my eyes. This isn't fair. None of this is fair. But I see you. I've always seen you. My father looked up from his paper. Good. You're here. He looked back down. No thank you. No acknowledgement of what I had sacrificed. Just good. You're here. Like I was a package that had finally arrived. Victoria closed her laptop with a dramatic sigh. Finally. I've been here for 3 days already. I have depositions to prepare. She looked at my suitcase. Is that all you brought? You're going to need more than that. How long am I staying? Victoria laughed. However long it takes, apparently. I have to get back to Boston by Friday. I went to see my mother alone. She lay in the ICU bed, pale and fragile, hooked up to machines that beeped and hummed. For a moment I felt something. Pity, fear, maybe even love. She looked so small, so vulnerable, so different from the woman who had spent 22 years making me feel invisible. Then she opened her eyes. Her first words to me were, "Not thank you for coming. Not, I'm glad you're here. Finally, she said. I hope you're not going to sulk about this. Someone had to stay, and Victoria has responsibilities. Even on what could have been her deathbed, she couldn't say one kind thing to me. As I was leaving the hospital that night, my grandmother pulled me aside. Your mother has always been afraid of you, you know. Afraid of me? I almost laughed. She doesn't even see me. Eleanor's eyes went dark. Oh, she sees you. That's exactly the problem. Before I could ask what she meant, a nurse interrupted with questions about medication. And the moment passed. I wouldn't understand those words for another 11 years. 2 weeks after the surgery, my mother came home. My father called a family meeting in the living room, and he arrived with a literal checklist. Medication schedule, he announced. 5 different pills, 4 times a day. Physical therapy appointments 3 times a week. Danielle will drive. Dietary restrictions, Danielle will cook all meals. Household maintenance, Danielle will handle everything Lydia usually does. He looked up from his list. Victoria will visit when she can. Her schedule is demanding. I found my voice. And when Mom is recovered? When she doesn't need full-time care anymore? My father blinked like the question surprised him. We'll discuss that when the time comes. I'd like to go back to school eventually. Victoria laughed. Danielle, you're 24. By the time Mom recovers, you'll be too old to start over. Just accept it. My father didn't even look up from his checklist. Fashion design isn't a real career anyway. Consider this an opportunity to find something more practical. I looked at my grandmother. Her face was rigid with suppressed fury. Victoria stood to leave, already packing her bag for Boston. Honestly, Danielle, you're not losing much. Fashion is just crafts. Sewing, anyone can do that. She checked her reflection in the mirror. I'll send you updates on the bar exam. Someone in this family should accomplish something real. She hugged my mother goodbye, long and warm and loving. When she passed me, she didn't even slow down. The first month disappeared into a routine that consumed everything. 6 in the morning, wake, prepare my mother's medications. 7, cook breakfast, low sodium, heart healthy, recipes I had to learn from scratch. 8 to noon, household chores, cleaning, laundry, errands. Noon, lunch preparation. 1 in the afternoon, drive 45 minutes to physical therapy. Wait, drive 45 minutes back. 3, afternoon medications. Help my mother with her exercises. 5, start dinner. 7, evening medications. 9, help my mother to bed. 10 at night, finally alone. Too exhausted to do anything but sleep. My sketchbook stayed in my suitcase, untouched. My hands, once precise with needles and chalk, became raw from cleaning products. My dreams, once vivid and colorful, turned gray and repetitive. I stopped thinking about fashion. It hurt too much. My mother never once said thank you. Instead, there was constant criticism. The soup is too salty. The house isn't clean enough. You're walking too loud. When I suggested hiring a part-time nurse to share the load, she looked at me like I had suggested setting fire to the house. Why would we waste money when you're already here? One night I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror. Dark circles under my eyes, hair unwashed, clothes stained with food and cleaning products. I didn't recognize myself. Who are you? I whispered. No answer came. 3 months into my new life as caretaker, my grandmother arrived unannounced. She brought a bag of pastries from my favorite bakery in Hartford, and she didn't ask how I was doing. She could see. We sat on the back porch, watching autumn leaves fall, and she said something I didn't understand at the time. This family has secrets, Danielle. Secrets that have shaped the way your mother treats you. What do you mean? You don't need to understand yet. But when the time comes, and it will, you'll need to be strong enough to face the truth. What truth? She looked at me with such sadness. The truth about who you are, and who your mother really is. She took my hand. When I'm gone, and sweetheart, I'm 82, I won't be here forever, I'm going to leave you something. I don't want anything, not things. Truth. I'm going to leave you the truth, and I need you to promise me you'll be brave enough to face it." I promised without understanding. As she was leaving that day, she paused at the door. "Your mother has been punishing you for 33 years, Danielle, and she doesn't even know why anymore. She's forgotten the original sin." "What original sin?" She shook her head. "Not yet, but soon. When you're strong enough." I didn't understand what my grandmother meant that day. I was too exhausted, too beaten down, too focused on surviving one day at a time. But 11 years later, standing in that dining room with DNA results in my hand, I finally understood. The original sin wasn't mine. It was my mother's, and she had spent 33 years making me pay for it. But I'm getting ahead of myself. There were still 9 more years of servitude before my grandmother's envelope would find me. 9 years of invisibility. 9 years of being the useful daughter who was never quite good enough. And somewhere in those years, I made a decision. If they were going to ignore me, if they were going to pretend I didn't exist, then I would use that invisibility to build something they couldn't take away. A secret career, a hidden identity, a future they knew nothing about. But that story comes later. First, you need to understand just how invisible I became, and what it cost me. My mother made a full recovery. The doctors called it remarkable. My father called it a miracle. Nobody called it what it actually was. 2 years of my life I would never get back. 22 months after her heart attack, Lydia Foster was declared fully recovered. Cardiac rehabilitation complete, diet controlled, medications managed. The woman who had needed round-the-clock care was now playing tennis twice a week at the country club. She returned to her social committees, her garden club, her lunch dates with friends who congratulated her on looking so well. I watched her drive away to her manicure appointments and thought about the girl I used to be. The design student, the dreamer, the one who believed the future was something she could hold in her hands. That girl had died somewhere in the 2 years of medication schedules and physical therapy drives and meals I cooked that were never quite good enough. What I expected when my mother recovered was simple. A thank you, perhaps. An acknowledgement of the sacrifice. Maybe even a conversation about returning to school. Some recognition that I had given up everything to keep her alive. What I received was something else entirely. I was standing in the hallway outside the kitchen when I heard them talking. "Your mother and me." Lydia's voice floated through the half-open door. "Well, it's not like Danielle had anything important going on anyway. She was always the practical one." My father's response cut even deeper. "At least she's useful for something." Neither of them knew I was listening. Neither of them would have cared if they did. I chose a Sunday dinner to ask the question that had been burning in my throat for months. The 4 of us sat around the dining room table, a rare occasion when Victoria was home from Boston. I cleared my throat. "Mom's fully recovered now. I was thinking about going back to school." The silence that followed felt like a verdict. Victoria laughed first. My father set down his fork with deliberate slowness. "You're 24 now, Danielle. What's the point? Fashion programs want young talent, fresh ideas. You've aged out. Get a job. Help with bills. That's what responsible adults do." Victoria nodded, her face arranged in false sympathy. "Honestly, it's probably for the best. You can find something more stable. More realistic." My mother said nothing. She just looked at me with that expression I knew so well. Not anger, not disappointment. Just nothing. Like I was a stranger who had wandered into her dining room by mistake. In one sentence, my father erased 2 years of waiting, 2 years of hoping, 2 years of telling myself it was temporary. It wasn't temporary. It was my life now. I found a job at a small women's boutique downtown called Marguerite's. The owner was a 63-year-old widow named Mrs. Chen, no relation to my professor at Parsons. She had kind eyes and a gentle voice, and she hired me even though I was overqualified for retail and underqualified for anything else without my degree. $11 an hour, 25 hours a week. I folded clothes. I organized displays. I helped customers find sizes and suggested accessories that might complete their outfits. Work that required none of my training, none of my talent, none of the skills I had spent 3 years developing. But Mrs. Chen noticed things. "You have an eye," she said once, watching me rearrange a window display. "You see how fabrics move, how colors speak to each other. Where did you learn that?" I couldn't answer without crying, so I didn't. With my meager savings and my boutique wages, I rented a studio apartment above a laundromat on the edge of town. 400 square feet of freedom. A hot plate, a mattress on the floor, a bathroom with no window, walls that shook every time the industrial dryers ran downstairs. But it was mine. The first space that was truly mine. I hung nothing on the walls. It felt too permanent, too much like giving up. My family's reaction to my new life was predictable. Victoria called it quaint that I was working as a shop girl. My father said it was honest work, better than chasing fantasies. My mother told me not to tell people I worked in retail because it was embarrassing. None of them ever visited the boutique. None of them ever saw where I lived. I was asked to create a photo slideshow for my mother's 60th birthday party. "Find nice pictures," she instructed. "Pictures that show what a wonderful family we are." I spent an entire Saturday in the attic, going through boxes of family photographs that spanned decades. What I found confirmed everything I had always felt but never been able to prove. Victoria had 3 complete albums dedicated to her achievements alone. Dance recitals from ages 4 to 16, 47 photos, soccer championships, 23 photos, academic awards and honor roll certificates, 31 photos, graduation ceremonies from high school, college, and law school, 56 photos. Every single birthday party documented with dozens of images. Victoria blowing out candles. Victoria opening presents. Victoria surrounded by friends and family who loved her. My documentation was different. I counted 11 photos of myself in 33 years of family history. A generic hospital baby picture. A kindergarten class photo with my face circled in pen, as if my parents needed help identifying which child was theirs. 3 Christmas mornings, where I appeared in the background, partially obscured by the tree or by someone's shoulder. 1 birthday party, age 8. In that photo, I wasn't even looking at the camera. I was looking at my grandmother, the only person in the room who was smiling at me. And 5 photos where I was partially cut off by the frame, as if whoever was taking the picture hadn't bothered to include me fully. 1 photo broke me completely. Christmas, 1999. I was 10 years old. Victoria stood front and center in a red velvet dress, beaming, holding a brand new bicycle. I was visible in the corner, holding a pair of socks. On the back of the photo, in my mother's handwriting, the caption read, "Victoria's best Christmas ever." No mention of me at all. But at the bottom of one dusty box, I found something else. A photograph I had never seen before. My mother, young and beautiful, standing with a man who was not my father. Dark hair, warm smile, familiar eyes. On the back, only 2 words. Summer 1990. I stared at that photo for a long time before slipping it into my pocket. I made the slideshow my mother requested. 60 photos of Victoria's accomplishments. 3 photos that included me. My mother cried happy tears at her party. "What a beautiful family," she said. I stood in the back, invisible as always, and said nothing. 6 months after I moved into my apartment, a letter arrived with no return address. Inside was a check for $2,000 and a handwritten note. For fabric, for classes, for dreams they can't kill. Tell no one. Love, Grandma. I cried for an hour, then I dried my tears and searched for online fashion courses. I found a continuing education program through the Fashion Institute of Technology. Evening classes, twice a week, affordable. I enrolled the same day. Every Tuesday and Thursday night from 7 to 10, I told my family I was working late at the boutique. In reality, I was learning pattern making, textile design, fashion business fundamentals. My professors were impressed. "You have raw talent," one of them told me. "Why aren't you in a degree program?" I couldn't explain without falling apart, so I just worked harder. My grandmother visited once a month, always in secret. She never announced herself to the rest of the family. She brought fabric samples, fashion magazines, home-cooked meals. We sat together on my mattress on the floor and talked about design. I learned that Eleanor had been a seamstress in her youth, something I had never known. I gave it up when I married your grandfather, she told me. He thought it wasn't proper for a wife. I've regretted it for 60 years. Why are you helping me? Because someone should have helped me. And because you're the only one in this family worth saving. Before leaving one evening, she paused at the door. Her face was serious. Your mother found out I came here today. She called me, furious. What did she say? She said I was wasting my money on you, that you'd never amount to anything. Eleanor's expression hardened. She's afraid, Danielle. She's been afraid of you since the day you were born. Afraid of what? Of what you represent. Of the truth you carry without even knowing it. I asked her to explain, but she shook her head. Not yet. You're not strong enough. But soon, I promise. When I'm gone, you'll understand everything. I didn't push. Some truths, I was learning, had to wait until you were ready to hear them. Sunday dinners at my parents' house remained mandatory. One evening, I arrived early to help set the table. My mother was waiting in the living room, holding something behind her back. Her expression was cold, triumphant. What is this? She held up a fashion magazine. Vogue Italia, the issue I had hidden in my bag and must have dropped during last week's dinner. It's a magazine, Mom. I know what it is. I want to know why you have it. I like looking at the designs. Designs! Her voice dripped with contempt. You're still chasing that fantasy? She tore the magazine in half, then tore it again, dropped the pieces at my feet. You need to grow up, Danielle. You're 25 years old. You work in a shop. You have no education, no prospects, no future. Stop pretending you're something you're not. She didn't know about the night classes. She didn't know about Eleanor's support. She didn't know that I had submitted 3 designs to an online competition just last week. She didn't know anything, and that was my only power. I knelt down and picked up the torn pages. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I just said, "Okay, Mom." Inside, something hardened into diamond. If you want me to be invisible, I thought, I'll be invisible. But I'll use that invisibility to build something you can't tear apart. That night, I received an email. Subject line, Competition Results, Emerging Designer Showcase. I was afraid to open it. What if my mother was right? What if I was nothing? I sat in my tiny apartment, laptop balanced on my knees, finger hovering over the trackpad. Finally, I clicked. Dear designer, we are pleased to inform you that your submission Phoenix Wing Coat has been selected as a finalist in the 2017 Emerging Designer Showcase. Finalist. Out of 3,000 entries. Prize, $500, and a feature on 3 fashion blogs. I read it 7 times to make sure it was real. I had submitted under a pseudonym because I couldn't risk my family finding out. The name I chose was Ember, a spark that survives the ashes, something small that can become fire. I was Ember now. Danielle Foster was the girl who folded clothes and took orders. Ember was something else entirely. I used the prize money to buy better fabric. I entered more competitions under the Ember name. I started an anonymous Instagram account, posting sketches, process photos, finished pieces. Within 3 months, I had 1,200 followers. Within 6 months, 5,000. Fashion bloggers started asking, "Who is Ember?" I told no one except Eleanor. And she kept the secret like a sacred trust. One night, scrolling through my growing Instagram comments, I froze. A comment from Victoria's account. "Love this coat. Where can I buy?" My sister had found Ember's page. She didn't recognize my work. She didn't know she was praising the sister she called worthless. Victoria clicked like on a photo of my design. She commented stunning on work she would have mocked if she knew it was mine. And I realized something that night. My invisibility was no longer a prison. It was a weapon. 7 years. That's how long I lived my double life. By day, Danielle Foster. Boutique worker, family afterthought, the daughter nobody saw. By night, Ember. Designer, dreamer, phoenix rising from ashes no one knew existed. My following grew into the tens of thousands. My designs caught the attention of fashion editors. I was commissioned by celebrities who never knew my real name. I built a business in secret, brick by brick, while my family dismissed me over Sunday dinners. And through it all, Grandma Eleanor cheered me on from the shadows. Until 3 years ago, when she stopped answering her phone. Until the morning I woke up to 17 missed calls from my father. Until I drove to Westbrook for a funeral that would change everything. Because Grandma Eleanor kept her promise. She left me the envelope. And inside was a truth so devastating it took me 6 months to find the courage to face it. But that story begins at her funeral. And the moment I realized my family's cruelty had a reason I never could have imagined. 3 years ago, my grandmother made me dinner for the last time. I didn't know it was the last time. You never do. Eleanor's cottage on Maple Lane was small and warm, filled with decades of memories pressed into every corner. The smell of roast chicken and rosemary filled the air when I arrived, mixed with the scent of fresh bread cooling on the counter. I came straight from work, still wearing my boutique name tag, and she greeted me at the door like she always did, with open arms and no judgment. She had set the table with her good china, the delicate set with the blue flowers that she only used for special occasions. I should have known then that something was different. We ate in comfortable silence, the kind that only people who truly know each other can share. She moved slower now, 87 and feeling every year of it, but her eyes were still sharp, still knowing, still seeing things that others missed. You're staring, Grandma. I'm allowed. I'm old. Old people stare. But her voice cracked on the last word, and I saw something in her expression I couldn't name. She kept looking at me like she was trying to memorize my face. After dinner, she led me to the small sewing room at the back of the cottage. Fabrics lined every wall, bolts of silk and cotton and wool stacked like a library of dreams. Patterns were pinned to a corkboard, yellowed with age. A vintage Singer sewing machine sat in the corner, the same one she had used for 60 years. "This room is yours now," she said. "When I'm gone, all of it. The fabrics, the patterns, the machine. Your mother doesn't know. I've already arranged it with my lawyer. Grandma, don't talk like that. Hush. We both know I'm running out of time. Let me say what I need to say." She opened a drawer and pulled out a small wooden box. Inside, resting on faded velvet, was a silver thimble worn smooth with decades of use. "This was my mother's," she said, "and her mother's before that. 4 generations of women who sewed their dreams into fabric. You're the 5th. Don't let this family break that chain." I held the thimble in my palm. It was warm, like it still carried the heat of all those hands that had worn it before me. I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. Sometimes silence is the only response that fits. We sat together in the sewing room, surrounded by fabric and memory. Eleanor took my hands in hers, and I felt them trembling. "I've been keeping a secret for 30 years, sweetheart. A secret that isn't mine to keep, but one I was forced to carry." "What kind of secret?" "Your mother made me promise never to tell you. She threatened to cut me off from you entirely if I ever spoke." "Tell me what, Grandma?" "What could be so terrible?" "The reason she's always treated you differently. The reason your father looks at you like you're a stranger. The reason Victoria was always the favorite." My heart pounded against my ribs. "What reason?" Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. "I can't tell you while I'm alive. Your mother would find out and she'd make your life even worse. But when I'm gone," she explained that she had made arrangements with her personal lawyer, not the family attorney. A separate document, a sealed envelope, a safety deposit box that no one else knew existed. Everything would be delivered to me 6 months after her death. Why 6 months? Because you'll need time to grieve me before you face what's inside. And because your mother needs time to let her guard down. If you confront her too soon, she'll have her lies ready. "This isn't fair," I said. "You're asking me to wait for something I don't even understand. I know it isn't fair. Nothing about your life has been fair. But I need you to trust me. I've always trusted you. You're the only one I trust." She cupped my face in her hands, the same way she had done when I was a child. "Then trust me one more time. The truth will come. And when it does, you'll finally understand why you were never the problem. You were never useless. You were never a disappointment. You were a reminder, and your mother couldn't forgive you for that." Before I left that night, she pressed something into my palm. A small key, old brass, no label. "Keep this safe. You'll know what it opens when the time comes." I drove home with the key in my pocket, questions swirling in my mind. I didn't know those would be the last words she ever spoke to me. 3 weeks later, my phone rang at 6:47 in the morning. I know the exact time because I stared at the screen for what felt like an eternity before answering. 17 missed calls from my father. My stomach dropped before I even heard his voice. "Danielle," he said, "your grandmother passed away in her sleep last night." The words didn't make sense at first. I heard them, but they refused to arrange themselves into meaning. "What?" "Eleanor." "She's gone. The funeral is Saturday. Be there by 10. He hung up before I could respond. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone still in my hand, staring at nothing. Eleanor was gone. The one person who saw me, loved me, believed in me. Gone. I cried until I couldn't breathe. Then I cried some more. Somewhere in that ocean of grief, I remembered the envelope. The secret she couldn't tell me. The truth waiting 6 months away. Had she known? Had she sensed that her time was running out? Of course she knew. Eleanor always knew. I arrived at Westbrook Funeral Home an hour early, the way Eleanor had always taught me. Early is on time is late. I wore a simple black dress I had made myself, Ember's work, though no one would ever know. I carried a small bouquet of lavender, her favorite flower. The funeral home smelled like lilies and floor polish, the same scent that would haunt me for months afterward. My mother was already there, directing the funeral staff like a general commanding troops. When she saw me, she barely paused. "The seating chart is done. You're in the 3rd row." 3rd row? But I'm her granddaughter. The front row is for immediate family and those who were close to your grandmother. Victoria is coming with Bradley. They need the space. I felt the words land like a slap. I was close to her. I was the closest. "Don't make a scene, Danielle. Not today." The service was beautiful in the way that funerals for beloved people always are. Beautiful and terrible and wrong. Victoria delivered the eulogy, 14 minutes of performative grief. She spoke of Eleanor's love for family, her dedication to tradition, her warm heart and generous spirit. She never mentioned the sewing room. She never mentioned the secret visits. She never mentioned me at all. I sat in the 3rd row, surrounded by distant cousins who kept whispering, "Which one is she again?" I clutched my lavender bouquet until my fingers ached and watched my family grieve together without me. After the service, a man in a gray suit approached me near the exit. Kind eyes, firm handshake. "Miss Foster? I'm David Whitmore, your grandmother's personal attorney. I didn't know she had a personal attorney. There's quite a bit your family doesn't know. Eleanor made sure of that. He handed me a business card. Call me in 6 months. She left specific instructions for you, and only you." The formal will reading took place 2 weeks later at the office of Morrison and Associates, the family attorney. We gathered in a conference room that smelled like old paper and expensive cologne. Richard, Lydia, Victoria with Bradley at her side, Aunt Margaret silent in the corner, and me. The lawyer read in a monotone, detached and professional. To Lydia Foster, Eleanor's house valued at $400,000, plus all furniture and household items. My mother accepted this with a satisfied nod, as if she had expected nothing less. To Victoria Foster Wells, Eleanor's jewelry collection, including the diamond earrings and pearl necklace, plus a trust fund of $150,000. Victoria squeezed Bradley's hand. Grandmother always had such good taste. To Richard Foster, Eleanor's investment portfolio, approximately $200,000. My father showed no emotion. Money was simply his due. Then the lawyer paused, shuffled his papers. To Danielle Foster, a collection of vintage fabric, a sewing machine, and a handwritten recipe book. The silence that followed was deafening. Victoria laughed first. Fabric? She left you fabric? My mother's lips curled. Mother always was sentimental about useless things. My father said nothing at all. I kept my face neutral. Thank you. That's all I wanted. Victoria smirked. I'm sure it is. What no one knew was that the fabric collection was worth nearly $10,000. Rare silks, vintage velvets, materials that collectors would pay dearly to own. What no one knew was that the sewing machine was a 1952 Singer, a collector's item in perfect condition. And what no one knew was that there was another will, another lawyer, another envelope. Eleanor had played this perfectly. As everyone stood to leave, Aunt Margaret caught my arm. Don't let them see you cry, she whispered. I'm not crying. Good. Because your grandmother was smarter than all of them combined. I know what she really left you. She walked away before I could ask how she knew, before I could ask what else she knew. I drove home with a box of fabric in my trunk and a secret burning in my chest. 6 months. I just had to wait 6 months. The waiting was the hardest part. I threw myself into work, both works. By day, I was Danielle Foster, shop girl, invisible daughter, family disappointment. By night, I was Ember, and Ember was rising. During those 6 months of waiting, my Instagram following grew to 75,000. I received my first major commission, a custom gown for a B-list actress who wore it to an awards show. I was featured in 3 online fashion publications. A buyer from a Manhattan boutique reached out, wanting to carry Ember's designs. I registered an LLC, Ember and Thread, LLC. My grandmother's fabric became the foundation of a capsule collection that sold out in 3 days. And through it all, my family had no idea. Victoria posted on Instagram about her amazing new find, a designer called Ember. My mother wore an Ember scarf she had bought online, not knowing her useless daughter had made it. The irony sustained me through every Sunday dinner. But beneath the success, the grief remained. Every night I talked to Eleanor's photograph. I'm building something, Grandma. I'm becoming someone. The silence that answered was unbearable. I marked each day on my calendar like a prisoner counting toward release. 182 days, then 100, then 50, then 10. And finally, 6 months to the day after Eleanor's death, my phone rang. Miss Foster? David Whitmore. Your grandmother's waiting period has ended. I have her bequest ready for you. I met him at his office that afternoon. It was small, private, tucked away in a building far from the family's usual lawyers. He greeted me with genuine warmth. Your grandmother spoke of you often. She was very proud of what you've built. She told you about Ember? She told me everything. She wanted someone to witness your success, in case she didn't live to see it herself. He placed a thick manila envelope on the desk between us. Sealed with red wax, Eleanor's personal seal. My name written across the front in her elegant handwriting. This was held in a private safety deposit box, completely separate from her official estate. He placed a key on the desk next to it, matching the one Eleanor had given me. There's a second box. The key opens it, but she wanted you to read the letter first. Then he slid a bank statement across the desk. My hands trembled as I read it. A separate account in my name, $50,000. She transferred this over the past decade, small amounts that wouldn't be noticed. A note was clipped to the statement, Eleanor's handwriting. For your dream, for your future, for the life they tried to steal from you. David Whitmore leaned forward. Miss Foster, I've been a lawyer for 35 years. I've seen many family secrets, but your grandmother was protecting you from something significant. Do you know what's in the envelope? I don't. She sealed it herself. But she told me one thing. What? She said when Danielle reads this, everything she thought she knew will change. Make sure she has somewhere safe to go. I drove home with the envelope on my passenger seat, just as Eleanor had planned. $50,000 in an account with my name, a key to a safety deposit box, and a sealed envelope containing a truth 33 years in the making. I could open it now, right now, rip through the wax seal, and finally know. But I didn't. I put it in my nightstand drawer instead. I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to learn why my mother hated me. I wasn't ready to discover why my father looked through me. I wasn't ready to understand why I had spent 33 years being called useless by people who were supposed to love me. I was afraid. But Christmas was coming. And somehow I knew that envelope would find its way to that dining room table. I just didn't know it would destroy everything, including the lies my family had built their entire lives upon. 2 weeks later, I finally opened it, and the truth inside burned like fire. The envelope sat in my nightstand drawer for 12 days. 12 days of knowing the truth was inches away. 12 days of being too afraid to reach for it. Every night I opened the drawer and looked at it. The red wax seal, Eleanor's handwriting, the weight of secrets I could feel through the paper. Every night I closed the drawer without touching it. Sleep became impossible. My dreams were filled with my grandmother's voice, repeating the same words over and over. Be brave. Be brave. Be brave. I didn't feel brave. I felt like a child standing at the edge of a cliff, knowing I had to jump, but unable to make my feet move. What finally broke me was a Sunday dinner. December 10th, 2 weeks before Christmas. I sat at my parents' table, invisible as always, while my mother announced Victoria's engagement party. Christmas Eve, she declared, the whole family. Danielle, you'll arrive 3 days early to decorate, and cook, and make everything perfect for your sister's moment. I nodded, said nothing, drove home in silence, and sat alone in my apartment at 11:47 at night, feeling the familiar weight of being invisible, being used, being nothing. Eleanor's words echoed in my mind. You were never the problem. If I was never the problem, then what was? I needed to know. Tonight. Now. I pulled the envelope from the drawer, sat on my bed with my back against the wall, turned it over in my hands 3 times. The red wax seal cracked under my thumb. Okay, Grandma, I whispered. I'm ready. Tell me the truth. The paper inside was thick, expensive, the kind Eleanor used for important correspondence. 8 pages, handwritten in her elegant script. And clipped to the front, 2 documents that would change everything I thought I knew about myself. I looked at the first document. Official letterhead from Gene Tech Laboratories. A DNA analysis report dated March 2019, 4 years ago. Eleanor had ordered this test without telling anyone. How she had obtained my father's DNA, I would never know. My hands trembled as I scanned the page. Medical terminology, percentages, charts, numbers that meant nothing to me. Then I reached the conclusion, boxed and bold at the bottom of the page. Richard Allen Foster and Danielle Marie Foster. 0% genetic match. Conclusion, excluded as biological father. 0%. Not a question of doubt. Not a maybe. Not a margin of error. 0. The room tilted sideways. I read it again, and again, and again. The words didn't change. Richard Foster was not my father. He had never been my father. The second document was my birth certificate. Not the copy I had seen before, but the original. In the space where the father's name should have been, someone had redacted the information with black marker. But the marker had faded over 33 years. Beneath it, barely visible, I could make out a name. Daniel. The last name was too obscured to read, but the first name was clear. Daniel. Danielle. I was named after him. A photograph fell from between the documents. Old, faded, edges worn soft with time. My mother, young and beautiful, maybe 22 years old, standing with a man I had never seen. dark hair, warm eyes, a smile that looked hauntingly familiar. On the back, in Eleanor's handwriting, 2 words: Lydia and Daniel, summer 1990, 6 months before you were born. I stared at that photograph for a long time. The man had my eyes, my chin, my smile. He looked at my mother like she was everything, and she looked at him like she wanted to forget he ever existed. I unfolded Eleanor's letter with shaking hands. The pages rustled like whispers, like secrets finally being spoken aloud. "My dearest Danielle," she wrote, "if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you in person. I'm sorry I made you wait. But some truths are too dangerous to speak, while the people who fear them are still watching. I'm going to tell you everything now. Everything your mother has hidden. Everything your father, Richard, has chosen to ignore. Everything I've carried alone for 33 years. It begins in the summer of 1990, before you were born. Before your mother married Richard. Before any of us knew what secrets we would have to keep. Your mother was 23 that summer. She worked as a receptionist at Hartford Textile Company, answering phones and filing paperwork while waiting for her real life to begin. She was already engaged to Richard Foster. A suitable match, both families agreed. Richard was stable, wealthy, boring. Your mother was restless, young, hungry for something more than a safe marriage and a comfortable house. Then Daniel arrived, new hire, junior accountant, completely unsuitable by every measure that mattered to our families. He was passionate about art, about life, about everything that made Richard seem dull by comparison. And he was passionate about your mother. They began an affair 3 months before the wedding. I knew something was wrong. I saw how your mother glowed when she came home late, how she checked her phone constantly, how she became someone else entirely when she thought no one was watching. I asked her once if she was happy. She laughed and said she had never been happier. I should have known then that happiness built on secrets never lasts. The letter continued, and each word cut deeper than the last. Your mother discovered she was pregnant 6 weeks after marrying Richard, Eleanor wrote. She knew immediately. The timing was wrong. The baby was Daniel's. She never told Daniel. She never told Richard. She let everyone assume the child was her husband's, and she buried the truth so deep she almost convinced herself it had never happened. But Richard suspected from the beginning. You didn't look like him. You didn't act like him. When you were 3 years old, he secretly ordered a blood type test. The results were impossible if he was your biological father. He confronted your mother. She denied everything, cried, raged, swore on her mother's grave that you were his. And Richard chose to believe her. Not because he was convinced, but because the alternative was too humiliating to accept. From that day forward, he looked at you differently. The warmth that should exist between a father and daughter simply wasn't there. It couldn't be there. Every time he saw your face, he saw the possibility of betrayal. Richard made a choice, Danielle. He chose his reputation over the truth. He chose comfort over justice, and he chose to let your mother punish you rather than face his own humiliation. They made a silent agreement. Pretend you were his but never truly love you, never truly accept you. Make you the scapegoat for sins you didn't commit. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. 33 years. 33 years of being treated like an outsider, and now I knew why. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining things. They had been punishing me my entire life for something I didn't do. Something I couldn't have done. I was a baby. I was innocent. And they made me pay for their lies anyway. I wiped my eyes and kept reading. Eleanor explained why she had stayed silent for so long. I suspected the truth from the day you were born, she wrote. You had Daniel's eyes, his smile. Anyone who looked closely could see it. I confronted your mother when you were 2 years old. I told her she needed to tell Richard the truth, or I would. Her response was immediate and brutal. If you ever tell anyone, Richard, Danielle, anyone, I will make sure you never see your granddaughter again. I will tell everyone you've gone senile. I will have you committed if I have to. You will never see her again. I was faced with an impossible choice. Lose you immediately by telling the truth, or stay silent and remain in your life. I chose silence. I chose having some of you over having none of you. I'm not sure it was the right choice, but it was the only one I could make. She wrote about Daniel next. What happened to him, where he went, why he never came looking for me. I investigated quietly over the years, she explained. Daniel was transferred to the company's Chicago office shortly after the wedding. He heard rumors a year later that your mother had a baby. He did the math. He called me, asking questions, asking if it was possible. I didn't know what to tell him. Your mother had already threatened me. I was afraid. Before I could decide what to do, your mother intercepted his next letter. He had written to me, asking for a meeting, asking for the truth. She wrote back, pretending to be me, forged my handwriting, told him a paternity test had been done, that you weren't his, that he needed to stop contacting our family or Richard would press charges for harassment. He believed it. He believed the letter was from me. He stopped calling, he stopped writing, he disappeared. Your mother erased him from her life so completely it was as if he had never existed. I traced him eventually. Daniel Mercer is his full name. He moved to Portland, Maine 15 years ago. Never married, no other children. He's 62 now, retired from accounting. I don't know if he knows about you, Danielle. I don't know if he wants to. But you deserve the choice to find out. Eleanor's letter explained what I had always sensed, but never understood. Why my mother hated me. Why my existence seemed to cause her pain. Your mother hates you because she hates herself, sweetheart. Every time she looks at you, she sees her mistake, her betrayal, her lie. Instead of facing her own shame, she transferred it to you. You became the vessel for her guilt. The punishment she couldn't give herself, she gave to you instead. And Richard. Richard knows you're not his daughter. He's known for 30 years. But admitting it means admitting he's been a fool. Admitting his marriage is a fraud. Admitting everything about his perfect family is a performance. He'd rather let you suffer than face the truth about his life. Your sister Victoria is Richard's biological daughter. She's proof that the marriage worked. She's the child they can love without complication. You were always the reminder of what came before. The evidence of a lie they couldn't escape. I'm not telling you this so you can destroy your family, Danielle. I'm telling you this so you can finally be free of them. You were never useless. You were never a disappointment. You were never the problem. You were a child caught in the crossfire of adult sins. What you do with this truth is your choice. Confront them or walk away. Forgive them or let them go. Find your father or leave the past buried. I trust you to make the right decision for yourself. But whatever you choose, remember this. You deserve a seat at the table. You always did. And if they won't give you one, build your own damn table. The final page was separate from the rest. Written in shakier handwriting, dated 1 week before Eleanor died. She had known she was running out of time. P.S., my darling girl, I need you to remember something, in case everything else fades. You were not a mistake. You were not a punishment. You were not something to be ashamed of. You were a miracle I got to love for 30 years. The bravest, kindest, most talented person I've ever known. Not in spite of what you endured, but because of how you survived it. Your mother's choices are not your story. Her shame is not your inheritance. You are allowed to be happy. You are allowed to be loved. You are allowed to take up space in a room without apologizing for breathing. Whoever your father is, wherever he is, he doesn't define you either. You are already whole. You always were. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you better. I'm sorry I stayed silent when I should have spoken. I'm sorry for every moment you spent believing their lies about who you are. But I'm not sorry I loved you. That was the easiest choice I ever made. Fly, my little phoenix. Build your empire. Wear your success like armor. And when they finally see what you've become, don't let them take credit for surviving what they did to you. Live, sweetheart. That's the only revenge that matters. All my love, forever and after, Grandma Eleanor. At the very bottom, almost hidden, She had added one more line. P.P.S. Ask your Aunt Margaret about Christmas 1991. She saw more than she's ever admitted. You're not the only one your mother threatened into silence. I sat motionless for an hour after finishing the letter. The pages spread across my bed like evidence at a crime scene. DNA results, birth certificate, photographs, newspaper clipping of Daniel Mercer's retirement. 33 years of questions finally answered. I wasn't broken. I was betrayed. I wasn't unlovable. I was unloved on purpose. I wasn't a failure. I was set up to fail. Every cruel word, every dismissal, every time they called me useless, it was never about me. It was always about them, their lies, their cowardice, their shame. The anger that rose in me was hot and clean and clarifying. Not the sad anger of someone who doesn't understand. This was the righteous anger of someone who finally does. They stole my childhood, my education, my self-worth, and they did it knowingly, deliberately, for 33 years. I could walk away, never see them again, let them rot in their lies. Or I could make them face what they had done. Christmas was 2 weeks away. Victoria's engagement party. The whole family gathered. 25 witnesses to 33 years of cruelty. 25 people who needed to know the truth. I picked up my phone and scrolled to a number I had saved months ago. The investigator I had hired when I first started wondering about my family's secrets. I typed a message. I need Daniel Mercer's current address and phone number. I need to know if he knows about me. I pressed send. Then I started planning. 3 days later, my phone rang. Miss Foster? This is Janet Chen, the investigator you hired. Did you find him? I did. Daniel Mercer, 62, lives in Portland, Maine, retired accountant. Never married, no children. She paused. But there's something else. What? He's been searching for information about your mother for the past 5 years. He hired someone too. A few months ago he found out about you. My heart stopped. He knows I exist? He knows your mother had a daughter 9 months after he left Connecticut. He's been trying to figure out how to reach you without disrupting your life. I couldn't breathe. The room spun around me. Miss Foster? Are you still there? Yes, I whispered. I'm here. He asked me to give you a message if I ever found you. He said, tell her I never knew. Tell her I would have stayed. Tell her I'm sorry it took so long. Christmas was in 17 days. And suddenly, I had so much more to fight for than just the truth. I spent the next 2 weeks becoming someone new. Not Danielle the invisible, not Danielle the useless. Someone my family had never met before. Someone who knew exactly what she was walking into and exactly what she was going to do. The morning after I finished reading Eleanor's letter, I woke after 3 hours of restless sleep and walked to my bathroom mirror. I expected to see someone shattered. Someone broken by the weight of 33 years of lies finally exposed. Instead, I saw clarity. The bags under my eyes were the same. The face was the same. But something behind the eyes had changed. I know who I am now, I whispered to my reflection. I know who you are. And I know exactly what I'm going to do. Christmas was 2 weeks away. Victoria's engagement party. 25 guests. The entire extended family gathered in one room. The perfect stage for the perfect revelation. This wasn't revenge, I told myself. This was justice. 33 years of lies deserved 33 seconds of truth. I gathered my weapons carefully. The DNA results, copied 3 times, originals secured in my safety deposit box. The birth certificate, photographed and backed up to the cloud. Eleanor's letter, memorized word for word, the original locked away where no one could destroy it. The photograph of my mother and Daniel tucked into my wallet like a talisman. And in my phone, a message I still hadn't answered. Daniel Mercer's number, provided by the investigator. I had stared at it for hours. Started typing a response 17 times. Deleted each one. Not yet. First, I needed to face the family that raised me. Then I could meet the father who never knew I existed. December 12th, 8:47 in the morning. An email arrived that changed everything. Subject line, urgent, Vogue feature inquiry, Ember and Thread. My coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. I opened it with trembling fingers. Dear Ember, the message began. Vogue's digital team has been following your remarkable rise with great interest. We believe you represent the future of American fashion design, and we would like to feature you in our March issue. We're requesting an exclusive interview, a professional photo shoot, and most importantly, the reveal of your identity. The mysterious designer everyone has been asking about, finally unmasked. Please confirm your interest by January 15th. The room spun around me. Vogue, the most prestigious fashion magazine in the world. They wanted to feature me. They wanted to know who I was. If I said yes, my identity would be public within 2 months. My family would discover that the useless daughter they had dismissed for 33 years was actually a successful designer with nearly 100,000 followers. Everything I had built in secret would be exposed, but maybe that was exactly what needed to happen. I typed my response carefully. Thank you for your interest. I'm prepared to reveal my identity, but I need until after the new year to finalize some personal matters. I'll confirm by January 10th. I pressed send. Then I laughed. Actually laughed out loud in my empty apartment. My mother wanted me to decorate for Christmas. She wanted me to cook and clean and make everything perfect for Victoria's moment. She had no idea I was about to decorate her perfect lie with the truth. I worked my last shift at the boutique before my Christmas vacation. Mrs. Chen watched me fold scarves with unusual precision, her kind eyes missing nothing. Something's different about you, dear. I finally figured out who I am. And who is that? Someone who doesn't fold scarves, not anymore. She smiled, and I saw something like pride in her expression. I always knew you were meant for bigger things, Danielle. The way you touch fabric, the way you see what others miss. You have a gift. I hope you're finally ready to use it. As I left the boutique that evening, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Portland area code. My heart stopped. A text message appeared on my screen. I know you need time. I've waited 33 years. I can wait a little longer. But when you're ready, I'm here. Daniel. I read it 7 times before getting in my car. He was real. He was out there. He was waiting for me. And in 2 weeks after I had faced the people who had stolen him from me, I would finally be ready to face him too. December 21st. 3 days before Christmas. I pulled into my parents' driveway at 10 in the morning, exactly as instructed. The house looked the same as it always had. White colonial, black shutters, perfectly manicured lawn even in winter. The house that had never felt like home. Now I knew why. My trunk was full of supplies. Decorations I had been ordered to buy. Ingredients for dishes I had been ordered to cook. And buried beneath the grocery bags, hidden in a side pocket of my overnight bag, a manila envelope containing copies of everything. My mother opened the front door before I reached the porch. No hug, no smile, no good to see you. You're late. I said 10 o'clock. It was 10:03. The lights need to go up on the porch today. The tree is in the living room, undecorated. Victoria's engagement banner arrived with a spelling error. They wrote congratulations with 1 L. Fix it. She turned and walked inside without offering to help carry anything. I stood on the porch for a moment, breathing in the cold December air. 3 more days. I just had to survive 3 more days. Then everything would change. The house was a museum of my exclusion. Family photographs lined every hallway, every mantel, every available surface. I counted them as I carried in the groceries. 37 frames. Victoria appeared in 35 of them. I appeared in 2. A group Christmas photo where I stood at the edge, barely visible, and my high school graduation, which they had been required to attend. In my childhood bedroom, nothing had changed. The same pink wallpaper I had begged them to let me replace when I was 12. The same twin bed with the same faded quilt. The same bookshelf filled with books I had outgrown decades ago. Frozen in time, like a museum exhibit of the daughter they had never wanted. I unpacked my bag and hid the envelope in the false bottom of my suitcase. Then I went downstairs to begin my servitude. The first day was decorations. 8 hours of hanging lights on the porch until my fingers went numb, trimming the 12-foot tree according to my mother's precise specifications, arranging garlands, wrapping ribbon, setting out candles. Victoria arrived in the afternoon, fresh from a spa weekend, and walked through the house inspecting my work. The garland is crooked. Fix it before the guests arrive. She didn't offer to help. She never did. The second day was cooking. I was in the kitchen from 6 a.m, prime rib to prep, vegetables to roast, pies to bake. Victoria wandered in around noon. I hope you're making the hollandaise from scratch. Bradley's family has standards. Bradley's family isn't here. They will be. Try not to embarrass us. My mother checked my progress periodically, finding fault with everything. The pastry is too thick. The vegetables aren't cut evenly. Why can't you do anything right? I said nothing. I just kept cooking. And I thought about the envelope upstairs. And I smiled. On the second day, while searching for extra napkins in a closet, I found something unexpected. An old shoebox hidden behind stacks of tablecloths. Inside were Christmas cards, letters, photographs, memories my mother had hidden away. One card caught my eye. A faded red envelope, elegant handwriting. I opened it carefully. To Lydia. Merry Christmas, my love. I'll wait for you forever. Daniel, 1990, 1 month before she married Richard. I photographed it with my phone and put everything back exactly as I found it. Another piece of evidence. Another nail in the coffin of her lies. Aunt Margaret arrived on Christmas Eve afternoon, 4 hours before the other guests. I wanted to help, she told my mother. My mother's smile was tight, forced. How thoughtful. Margaret found me in the kitchen an hour later, arranging hors d'oeuvres on silver trays. She waited until my mother left the room, then slipped through the door and closed it behind her. I need to talk to you, she whispered. Privately. Aunt Margaret, I'm busy. It's about your grandmother's letter. I know she sent you one. My hands stopped moving. We stepped into the pantry and closed the door. The space was small, crowded with canned goods and holiday supplies. Margaret's voice was barely audible. Eleanor told me before she died. She told me what she was leaving you. Then you know. I know Richard isn't your father. I've known for 32 years. She told me about Christmas 1991, how she had walked into my parents' house early, wanting to help Eleanor set up for the holiday, how she had heard voices from the study, my mother and Eleanor arguing. She heard everything. The affair, Daniel, the pregnancy, the lies. And then my mother saw her in the doorway. If you say one word, my mother had hissed, I'll tell everyone about your bankruptcy, about Michael's gambling, about why you really moved back to Westbrook. Margaret had secrets too. My mother collected them like weapons. I've been a coward for 32 years, Margaret said. I let her bully me into silence. Why are you telling me now? Because Eleanor asked me to. And because tonight, when you do whatever you're planning to do, you shouldn't be alone. How do you know I'm planning something? She almost smiled. You have Eleanor's eyes. And right now, they look exactly like hers did when she'd finally had enough. She pressed something into my hand. A flash drive. Your grandmother gave this to me 6 months before she died. She said you might need evidence beyond the letter. What's on it? Recordings. Your mother confessing to Eleanor. Richard admitting he knew. Everything you need to prove you're not crazy. I closed my hand around it like a lifeline. Another weapon. Another piece of the truth. Victoria arrived at 4 with Bradley, both of them dressed like they were posing for a magazine cover. The tree looks acceptable, Victoria announced, surveying my work. I suppose Danielle's good for something. Bradley frowned slightly but said nothing. Victoria demanded my opinion on her engagement party dress. She twirled in front of the mirror while I stood watching. "Well, how do I look?" "Beautiful," I said honestly. "I know. I just wanted to hear you say it." She left to fix her makeup, and Bradley lingered. He looked uncomfortable, out of place. "Danielle, I just wanted to say..." "Yes?" "The way they treat you. I've noticed. It's not right." I studied his face. "Then why don't you say something?" "It's complicated." "It's not complicated, it's cowardice." He flinched but didn't argue. Victoria returned before he could respond. "Bradley, don't waste time talking to her. We need to rehearse our announcement." He followed obediently, but glanced back at me before leaving the room. Something in his expression, doubt, awareness, something that hadn't been there before. As Victoria passed me in the hallway, she leaned close. "Don't get any ideas about tonight," she whispered. "This is my moment. Try to stay invisible for once." I smiled. "Don't worry, Victoria. After tonight, you'll never forget I exist." She frowned, confused, then laughed it off. "You're so weird. No wonder nobody loves you." She walked away. I watched her go and thought 6 hours. Just 6 more hours. 5 o'clock, 1 hour until the guests would arrive. The house was perfect. My work, my hands, my exhaustion made visible. Candles flickered in crystal holders I had polished. Music played softly from speakers I had positioned. Champagne chilled in ice buckets I had filled. 25 place settings arranged around the extended dining table. I had seen the seating chart on my mother's desk. I had counted the names. I had noticed that mine wasn't among them. I went to my childhood bedroom and retrieved the envelope from my suitcase, checked the contents one more time. DNA results. Photograph. Copy of Eleanor's letter. The flash drive Margaret had given me, tucked into my pocket. Everything in order. Everything ready. I stood at the window, watching the first cars pull into the driveway. For a moment, doubt crept in. What if I was wrong to do this publicly? What if I should just walk away, never look back? What if exposing them only made me as cruel as they were? Eleanor's voice echoed in my mind. "You deserve a seat at the table. You always did. And if they won't give you one, build your own damn table." This wasn't cruelty. This was truth. They had 33 years to be honest. They chose lies. Now the choice was mine. I looked at my phone one more time. Daniel's message still there. "When you're ready, I'm here." I typed a response. "After tonight, I'll be ready. I'll call you tomorrow. I have a lot to tell you." I pressed send. Then I took a deep breath, smoothed my dress, and walked downstairs to join the party. Not as the invisible daughter, not as the useless disappointment, but as the woman who was about to burn their beautiful lie to the ground. The dining room was magnificent, I should know. I had spent 3 days making it that way. 25 guests mingled with champagne flutes, admiring the decorations, complimenting my mother on her exquisite taste. Nobody mentioned who had actually hung every light, arranged every flower, folded every napkin. I walked toward the table looking for my place card. I searched the head of the table. Richard and Lydia side by side. Victoria and Bradley, places of honor. Aunts, uncles, cousins. Everyone accounted for, everyone except me. I circled the entire table. 25 names, 25 chairs. My name wasn't there. That's when I saw it. My chair, the one I had sat in for 33 years of family dinners, now had a new place card. Bradley Harrison. My mother appeared beside me, champagne in hand, smile sharp as a blade. "Oh, Danielle, I meant to tell you. We needed the space." She didn't lower her voice. She wanted everyone to hear. "There's no place for useless people at this table." The room fell silent, and I smiled. "Actually, Mom, I think there's about to be." 25 people watched my mother humiliate me. 25 people said nothing. And for the first time in 33 years, I didn't need them to. The dining room glittered with my handiwork. Crystal glasses catching candlelight I had arranged. Garlands I had hung framing every window. The 12-foot tree I had decorated standing proud in the corner. All of it beautiful. all of it a stage for my erasure. I looked at the faces around me. Uncle Thomas with his champagne, suddenly fascinated by the ceiling. Cousin Meredith whispering to her husband behind her hand. Old Aunt Patricia clutching her pearls like a lifeline. Victoria smirking from her place of honor, enjoying every second of my humiliation. Bradley frozen beside her, fork halfway to his mouth. Richard at the head of the table, jaw tight, eyes fixed on his plate. And my mother, triumphant, certain she had won again. The old Danielle would have retreated to the kitchen. The old Danielle would have cried in the bathroom where no one could see. The old Danielle would have accepted this as her place. Nowhere. But that Danielle had died 12 days ago, reading her grandmother's letter. This Danielle had an envelope in her bag and fire in her chest. My mother waited for me to crumble. She had seen it 1,000 times. The tears, the quiet exit, the surrender. She expected it now. She was wrong. I didn't move from the table. I set down the dish I was carrying slowly, deliberately, on the sideboard behind me. I looked at the empty space where my chair should have been. I looked at Bradley's name card in my spot. I looked at my mother. I decorated this house for 3 days, Mom. My voice was calm, steady, carrying across the silent room. Lydia's smile flickered. And we appreciate your help. I cooked half this meal. I arranged every flower, I folded every napkin. Your point? My point is that I built this beautiful room. And you're telling me I don't deserve to sit in it? Her eyes narrowed. Don't be dramatic, Danielle. You can eat in the kitchen. You've always preferred it there anyway. Nervous laughter rippled from somewhere in the room. Victoria raised her champagne glass. Can we please not do this tonight? It's my engagement party. I ignored my sister. I kept my eyes locked on my mother. No, I don't think I will eat in the kitchen. The conversations that had been dying around us went completely silent. Champagne glasses lowered. All eyes turned to the invisible daughter who was suddenly very visible. Richard's voice cut through the tension. Danielle, that's enough. I turned to face him. The man I had called father for 33 years. Is it, Dad? Is it enough? Something in my tone made him go still. The way I said Dad, like a word I no longer believed in. I saw something flicker in his expression. Not guilt. Richard Foster wasn't capable of guilt. But fear. The same fear I had seen in my mother's eyes. I reached into my bag. My mother's gaze followed my hand, tracking every movement. I pulled out the manila envelope. Thick, official, undeniable. The room seemed to hold its breath as I walked toward the head of the table. Guests parted to let me pass, confusion and curiosity warring on their faces. I stopped at Richard's chair, looked down at the man who had watched my mother destroy me for 33 years and never once intervened. He looked up at me with that familiar expression. Irritation. Dismissal. Absence. I placed the envelope directly on his plate, covering his untouched prime rib. Merry Christmas, Dad. My voice carried to every corner of the room. I finally understand why you never saw me as your daughter. Richard's face went pale. His hands trembled as he reached for the envelope. What is this? Open it. Everyone should hear what's inside. My mother moved fast, reaching for the envelope. This is ridiculous. Danielle, stop this tantrum immediately. Don't touch it, Mom. I kept my voice steady, controlled. It's not for you. Though you already know what's inside, don't you? Our eyes met. 33 years of unspoken truth suspended between us. She froze with her hand outstretched, and for one moment I saw the mask slip. Terror. Pure, undisguised terror. Richard's hands shook as he broke the seal and pulled out the documents. I watched his face as understanding dawned. First confusion as he scanned the pages, then recognition as the words registered, then something that looked almost like relief, like a man who had been holding his breath for 3 decades finally allowed to exhale. Where did you get this? His voice was barely a whisper. Grandma Eleanor. She left me the truth you've been hiding my entire life." I took the document from his trembling hands and turned to face the room. 25 witnesses to 33 years of cruelty. 25 people who had watched my family dismiss me, belittle me, erase me. 25 people who were about to learn why. "This is an official DNA analysis from Gene Tech Laboratories." My voice was clear, steady, carrying to every corner of the dining room. I saw phones being lowered, conversations abandoned, all attention fixed on me. Subject A, Richard Allen Foster. Subject B, Danielle Marie Foster. I paused, letting the silence build, letting the anticipation grow. Genetic comparison results. 0% match. Gasps erupted around the table. I heard Victoria's champagne glass hit the table with a sharp clink. Conclusion: Richard Allen Foster is excluded as the biological father of Danielle Marie Foster. The room erupted into chaos. Whispers became exclamations. Hands flew to mouths. Eyes darted between me and my parents. I pulled the photograph from the envelope, the one Eleanor had kept hidden for 33 years. She also left me this. My voice cut through the noise. Our mother, summer of 1990, with a man named Daniel. 6 months before I was born. I held it up so everyone could see. My mother, young and radiant, standing with a man who was clearly not Richard. A man whose eyes and smile I saw every time I looked in a mirror. The whispers grew louder, spreading like fire. I always thought Danielle looked different. Lydia had an affair? Before the wedding? Richard knew? I let them talk. Let the truth sink in. Let 33 years of lies unravel in real time. My father sat motionless, staring at the photograph. The color had drained from his face entirely. "You knew," I said softly, "just to him, didn't you?" He didn't answer. "Grandma Eleanor told me everything. You've known since I was 3 years old. You did a blood type test. The results were impossible if you were my father. Still nothing. You knew I wasn't your daughter. And you let her treat me like garbage for 30 years. You watched her punish me for a sin I didn't commit. And you did nothing." Richard finally spoke. His voice was barely audible, cracking on every word. "I always suspected. From the day you were born. You didn't look like me, didn't act like me. But I told myself..." "Told yourself what? That if I ignored it, it would go away. That pretending was easier than knowing." The room had gone completely silent again. Every guest frozen, watching the patriarch of the Foster family crumble before their eyes. "You could have left her," I said. "You could have demanded a paternity test. You could have been honest with me, with yourself, with everyone. But you chose lies instead, and I've been paying for that choice my entire life." My mother found her voice. "Richard, tell them she's lying." Her command rang hollow, desperate. "Tell them these documents are forged, that she's making this up to ruin Victoria's night." Richard didn't move, didn't speak, didn't come to her defense. "My mother was a senile old woman," my mother continued, her voice rising. "She didn't know what she was doing at the end. This is all some kind of misunderstanding." "Grandma Eleanor was sharper than anyone in this room," I said. "Including you." Her eyes filled with tears. Practiced, perfect, on cue. "I can't believe my own daughter would do this to me. On Christmas Eve. In front of our family. Your daughter?" My voice was ice. "When have you ever treated me like your daughter? I raised you. I fed you. I kept a roof over your head. You erased me from photo albums. You called me useless at every opportunity. You made me give up my education to care for you and then told me I was too old to go back. You have never once treated me like your daughter. I was your servant, your scapegoat, your punching bag." The relatives shifted uncomfortably. The whispers returned, but different now. Not gossip, judgment. Old Aunt Patricia spoke up. "Lydia, is this true? About the affair?" My mother's mask slipped further, the careful composure she had maintained for 33 years cracking in real time. "It was one mistake. One summer 34 years ago." The room erupted again. Voices overlapping, questions flying, accusations building. And through it all, my mother stood frozen in the ruins of her perfect lie. Victoria stood up, her face flushed with rage. "This is insane. She's lying. She has to be lying." I turned to my sister, the golden child, the favorite, the one who had everything I was denied. "No, Victoria, I'm not lying. And I think you knew. I don't know what you're talking about. You found out somehow. Maybe you overheard them. Maybe Mom told you. But you knew I wasn't Richard's daughter, and you used it. Every time you called me useless. Every time you said I didn't belong, you knew why and you enjoyed it." Victoria's face went pale, then red, then pale again. "So what if I knew? You think it was easy for me? Having a sister who was living proof that my mother was a cheat. I was a child, Victoria, a baby. I didn't do anything to you. You existed. That was enough." The words hung in the air, ugly and honest. 33 years of cruelty distilled into 3 words. You existed. That was enough. Bradley pushed back from the table. His face had gone gray. "Victoria, stop talking," she spun on him. "Don't tell me what to do. I can't believe what I'm hearing." Bradley's voice was quiet but firm. "Your mother admits to an affair. Your father admits he knew your sister wasn't his. And your biggest concern is your engagement party? This is my family, Bradley. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. I just don't like what I see." He stood up, walked around the table toward me, 25 pairs of eyes following his every step. "I'm sorry," he said to me. "I should have said something months ago, years ago, the way they treat you. It's wrong." Victoria's voice rose to a shriek. "Bradley!" He didn't turn around. "I need some air." He walked out of the dining room. The front door opened and closed. Victoria stood alone in her champagne-colored dress, looking like a costume for a play that had just ended. Richard hadn't moved since reading the DNA results. He sat at the head of his table, surrounded by his family, utterly alone. The patriarch of nothing. I walked back to stand before him. "You have nothing to say to me? What do you want me to say?" "The truth. For once in 33 years. A long pause. Then words I had waited my entire life to hear. "I knew before you were born." The room went silent again. Even Victoria stopped her dramatics to listen. Lydia came home smelling like another man's cologne. I saw how she looked at her phone, how she glowed when she thought I wasn't watching. I knew something was wrong. But you married her anyway. The wedding was planned. Both families expected it. I thought once we were married it would stop. I thought I could love her enough to make her forget him. And when I was born, he couldn't meet my eyes. You had his eyes, Daniel's eyes. I knew the moment I saw you. You could have divorced her, demanded answers, done something, and admit to everyone that my wife cheated on me, that my marriage was a fraud from the start, that I was a fool. His voice cracked. I told myself if I ignored it, it would go away. If I never acknowledged it, it wouldn't be real. But you were always there, reminding me. Every time I looked at you, I saw him, so you let her punish me instead. It was easier than facing the truth. Did you ever love me? Even a little? He finally looked up, met my eyes, and in his gaze I saw the answer before he spoke it. I tried, I wanted to, but every time I started to, I'd see him, in your face, in your smile. And I couldn't. The words should have devastated me. Instead, they set me free. So you chose your pride over a child who didn't ask to be born. Yes. His voice broke completely. God help me, yes, I thought the worst was over. I thought there was nothing left to reveal. I was wrong. Aunt Margaret stood up, not hesitantly this time, deliberately, fully, like a woman who had finally made a decision after 32 years of silence. "Lydia," she said, and her voice rang through the silent room. "It's time to stop lying. To everyone." My mother's face went from flushed to gray. "Margaret, sit down." "No, I've been sitting down for 32 years. I've been keeping your secrets because you threatened me. because you knew things about my life that I couldn't afford to have exposed. Margaret turned to me. But your grandmother freed me from that, Danielle. Before she died, she told me it was time. And she gave me proof. Margaret! My mother's voice was desperate now, pleading in a way I had never heard before. There's more, my aunt said, ignoring her completely. More than the affair. More than the DNA. Something Danielle still doesn't know. She looked at me with tears streaming down her face. Something about why Daniel really left. And what your mother did to make sure he never came back. I thought I knew the worst of it. I thought the DNA results were the final secret. But my aunt stood in the middle of that ruined dinner party, tears streaming down her face, and I realized my family's lies had layers I hadn't even begun to uncover. The dining room was frozen. 25 people suspended in place like figures in a painting. Champagne going flat in forgotten glasses. Candles flickering, casting shadows across stunned faces. Victoria still standing, her perfect dress wrinkled now, mascara beginning to run. Richard slumped in his chair like a man awaiting execution. And my mother, for the first time in my memory, looked absolutely terrified. Margaret stood straight, shoulders back, decades of silence burning away with every word. I've kept your secrets for 32 years, Lydia. I let you threaten me into submission. I watched you destroy your own daughter because I was too afraid to speak. Her voice cracked, but she kept going. But Eleanor made me promise. Before she died, she made me promise that when Danielle finally learned the truth, I would tell her the rest. The rest? My own voice sounded strange to my ears. What do you mean, the rest? The part your grandmother couldn't prove. The part only I witnessed. My mother stepped forward. Margaret, I'm warning you. With what? Margaret's voice rose with sudden fury. What else can you possibly threaten me with? Your daughter just exposed everything. Your husband just admitted he knew. There's nothing left to hide. There are things that don't need to be said. No, there are things that should have been said 33 years ago. Margaret turned to face me fully. Her eyes were wet, but her voice was steady now. It was Christmas, 1991. You were almost 2 years old. I came to this house early, just like today. I wanted to help your grandmother set up for the holiday dinner. The front door was unlocked. I walked in and heard voices from the study, angry voices, your mother and Eleanor arguing. What they were saying stopped me cold. She took a deep breath. Eleanor was furious. She said you have to tell him. Daniel deserves to know he has a daughter. And your mother said he doesn't have a daughter. Richard has a daughter. That's how it's going to stay. Eleanor told her she was punishing you for her own sin. That you weren't even 2 years old and already she treated you like you were contaminated. And Lydia said, because every time I look at her, I see him. I see my mistake walking around in my house, eating at my table, calling another man Daddy. The words hung in the air like poison. My mother's face had gone completely white. Several relatives gasped. Victoria sank back into her chair, all fight drained from her. But that wasn't the worst part, Margaret continued. Eleanor threatened to contact Daniel herself. She said she had his address. She would write to him. He deserved to know the truth. And Lydia told her if you contact Daniel, I'll make sure you never see Danielle again. I'll tell Richard you've gone senile. I'll have you committed if I have to. You will not destroy my marriage. Margaret's voice dropped. Eleanor said your marriage is built on a lie. And Lydia answered, every marriage is built on lies, Mother. Mine just has bigger ones. I stepped back, trying to process what I was hearing. Trying to reconcile this version of my mother with even the cruel woman I had known. She had threatened to have her own mother committed. She had used me as a weapon to keep Eleanor silent. How did she find out you heard? I asked. I knocked over an umbrella stand. Margaret's laugh was bitter. Clumsy even then. The arguing stopped. Lydia appeared in the doorway and asked how much I'd heard. I said enough. And that's when she told me what would happen if I ever repeated it. She knew about my bankruptcy, about Michael's gambling, about why we really moved back to Westbrook. She collected secrets like weapons, and she used them to keep everyone silent while she punished you for existing. The room had gone completely still. No whispers now, no gasps. Just the sound of a family realizing that everything they thought they knew was wrong. "But that's not the worst of it," Margaret said again. "That's not why Daniel really left." My aunt reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. She connected it to a small portable speaker she had brought. "Your grandmother recorded this conversation in 2019. She wanted evidence that couldn't be disputed." Margaret pressed play, and Eleanor's voice filled the room, old, but clear and unmistakable. "Tell me what you did, Lydia. I need to hear you say it." Then my mother's voice, captured on tape 4 years ago. "Fine. You want the truth? Daniel called you in 1992. He wanted to know if the baby was his. And you told me." The recording continued, and I heard my mother confess to something I never could have imagined. I intercepted his next letter. He'd written to you, asking for a meeting, asking for the truth about me. "And?" Eleanor's voice prompted. And I wrote back. Pretending to be you, I told him the baby wasn't his, that a paternity test had been done, that he needed to stop contacting our family or Richard would press charges for harassment. You forged my handwriting. I practiced for weeks. He believed it. He stopped calling. He stopped writing. He disappeared. The room erupted. Voices overlapping, accusations flying, decades of polite silence shattered in an instant. But I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I could only stand there as the full weight of what my mother had done crashed over me. Daniel had tried to find out. Daniel had wanted to know. He had written letters, made phone calls, searched for the truth. And my mother had forged my grandmother's handwriting, pretended to be Eleanor, and driven him away with lies. "He thought you didn't want him," I whispered. "He thought he wasn't my father." "Because that's what I needed him to think," my mother's recorded voice answered. "Because if he came back, everything would fall apart." The recording continued. Richard's voice joined in, captured in that same conversation. "You told me Daniel was harassing your mother. That's why I threatened to call the police." "It was the only way to make him stop," Lydia replied. "I believed you." Richard's recorded voice was heavy with exhaustion. "God help me. I helped you destroy that man's chance to know his own daughter." "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know she forged that letter." Richard looked up from the table now, his face ashen. His voice matched his recorded self. "I didn't know. I thought Eleanor had rejected him. I thought he just gave up. My mother had manipulated everyone. Eleanor, Richard, Daniel, me. She had woven a web of lies so complex that even the people closest to her couldn't see the truth. The relatives erupted into chaos. Old Aunt Patricia stood up, her voice shaking with fury. "Lydia, how could you? That man had a right to know his own child." Uncle Thomas slammed his hand on the table. "This is fraud, forgery, criminal behavior." Cousin Meredith was crying openly. "I always knew something was wrong with this family, but this is beyond anything I imagined." Through it all, my mother stood frozen in the center of the storm. Her careful mask had shattered completely. No more practiced tears, no more false smiles, just raw, exposed desperation. "You don't understand. None of you understand." "Then explain it, Mom." My voice cut through the chaos. "Explain why you stole my father from me. He would have ruined everything. Richard would have divorced me. I would have been a single mother. A scandal. I would have lost the house, the money, the life I built. So you chose comfort over my right to know my own father. I chose survival. You chose yourself. You always choose yourself." Victoria's voice cut through the noise. "Mom, just stop talking. You're making it worse." I turned to my sister. The golden child. The favored one. The daughter who had everything I was denied. "You knew too. Didn't you?" Victoria's face flushed. "I don't know what you're talking about. You found out somehow. Maybe you overheard them arguing. Maybe Mom told you to keep you loyal. But you knew I wasn't Richard's daughter, and you used it. Every time you called me useless, every time you said I didn't belong. You knew exactly why, and you enjoyed every second of it. Silence. Victoria's mouth opened and closed. Then the mask dropped. So what if I knew? Her voice was venom. You think it was easy for me? Having a sister who was living proof that my mother cheated? Having to watch everyone whisper about why we looked so different? I was a child, Victoria. I was a baby. I didn't do anything wrong. You existed. That was enough. You were a constant reminder of Mom's mistake. A walking scandal that could have destroyed our family at any moment. I'm not sorry I treated you badly. You deserved it just for being born. A voice came from the doorway. Bradley. He had returned, but he hadn't come back inside. He stood at the threshold, his face pale with disgust. I heard everything, he said quietly. I was standing in the hallway. Victoria spun toward him. Bradley, please let me explain. He held up his hand. I've heard enough explanations for one lifetime. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the engagement ring she had shown off so proudly just hours ago. He walked to the sideboard and set it down gently. I can't marry into this family. I can't be part of this. I'm sorry. Victoria's face crumpled. Bradley, no, please. But he was already walking away. The front door opened, closed, and the sound of his car starting echoed through the silent house. Victoria collapsed into her chair, sobbing. Her perfect night, her perfect announcement. Gone. I walked back to stand before Richard, the man who had watched my mother destroy me and chosen silence over truth. You helped her. I didn't know about the forged letter, but you helped her in other ways. You made sure I stayed invisible. You told me my dreams were worthless. You let her erase me from family photos, from family history, from family memory. What was I supposed to do? His voice was barely audible. Be a father. Even if I wasn't yours biologically, I was a child in your house. I called you Dad. I loved you. I looked up to you. And you punished me for something I didn't do. His face crumpled, the careful composure he had maintained for 30 years finally breaking. I couldn't love you back. I tried. In the beginning, I tried. But every time you smiled, I saw him. Every time you accomplished something, I thought that's not mine. That came from someone else. So you punished me for being talented, for being capable, for being anything at all. I punished you for being his. Then he said something that broke me and freed me at the same time. Do you know what the worst part is? His voice was barely audible. Tell me. I was relieved when Lydia suggested you drop out of school to care for her. I was relieved when you gave up your dreams. Because if you succeeded, if you became someone important, everyone would eventually see the truth. That you were nothing like me. That you never were. You deliberately held me back. We both did, your mother and I. It was the one thing we agreed on. If we kept you small, kept you invisible, no one would look too closely. No one would ask questions. You sacrificed my entire life to protect your lie. Yes. He couldn't meet my eyes. God forgive me, yes. I turned to my mother. She stood alone now. Richard broken at the table. Victoria collapsed in her chair. Margaret triumphant. Relatives horrified. No allies left. No more masks to wear. You think you're so righteous, she spat. So perfect, standing there in judgment. But you don't know what it was like. Then tell me. Tell me what was so terrible that you had to torture your own child for 33 years. I was 23. I was scared. Daniel was everything Richard wasn't. Passionate, exciting. He made me feel alive. And for one summer I let myself believe I could have a different life. And when you got pregnant, I panicked. The wedding was in 2 months. Both families had expectations. I couldn't throw everything away for a man I barely knew. So you married Richard. I thought I could forget. I thought once you were born, I would look at you and just see my daughter, my child. I thought love would be enough. But it wasn't. No. Her voice broke completely. I looked at you and I saw every choice I didn't make, every road I didn't take. You were a living reminder that I chose safety over love, comfort over passion, and I hated you for it. You hated me because you hated yourself. Yes. The word was barely a whisper. God help me, yes. Every cruel thing I ever said to you was something I wanted to say to myself. I'm not going to forgive you, Mom. I know. I'm not going to pretend this conversation fixes anything. I know that too. Good. Because I want you to remember this night for the rest of your life. Every Christmas, every family gathering. I want you to remember what you did, what you admitted, and who you really are. I picked up the documents from the table. The DNA results, the photographs, the evidence of 33 years of betrayal. I folded them carefully and placed them back in the envelope. I want everyone here to remember something. My voice carried across the silent room. For 33 years, I was told I was useless, disappointing, not good enough. I believed it. I let it define me. But I was never the problem. I was never defective. I was just inconvenient. A living reminder of lies everyone in this family chose to protect. Danielle, Richard started. Don't, I cut him off. Don't say my name like it means something to you. It never did. I turned to Aunt Margaret. Thank you for finally telling the truth. She nodded, tears streaming. I should have done it years ago. Yes. But you did it tonight. That matters. I walked toward the door. No one tried to stop me. Victoria's voice, bitter and broken, followed me. So that's it? You destroy everything and just walk away? I paused at the threshold. I didn't destroy anything, Victoria. I just stopped pretending it wasn't already broken. I looked at her one last time. Enjoy your engagement party. Oh, wait. Bradley left. I guess there's no place for dishonesty in his family. I stepped out into the cold December night. The door closed behind me, and for the first time in 33 years, I was free. I expected the driveway to be empty. I expected to walk to my car alone, drive back to my apartment, and collapse into the silence of my own space. But someone was waiting for me. A car I didn't recognize sat at the end of the driveway. A man leaned against it, watching the house. When he saw me, he straightened. Dark hair, graying at the temples. Kind eyes. A nervous smile that looked hauntingly familiar. My heart stopped. He took a step toward me. You're Danielle. Not a question, a recognition. I couldn't speak. I'm sorry to show up like this. I know you asked me to wait, but when I got your text about tonight, I couldn't stay away. I couldn't let you face them alone. He was shaking. I was shaking. The cold December air swirled around us, but neither of us moved to escape it. I'm Daniel, he said, and I think I'm your father. I stood in my mother's driveway on Christmas Eve, snow beginning to fall, and met the man whose existence had shaped my entire life. The man I had never been allowed to know. The man who had spent 33 years believing a lie my mother had told him. And for the first time since I opened that envelope, I had no idea what to say. I had imagined meeting my father 1,000 times. In restaurants, in parks, in carefully planned reunions where I would know exactly what to say. I never imagined it would be in my mother's driveway on Christmas Eve, with mascara on my cheeks and 33 years of questions caught in my throat. Daniel Mercer stood 10 feet away from me, dark hair graying at the temples, kind eyes that crinkled at the corners when he tried to smile. Hands shoved deep in his coat pockets, shoulders hunched against the cold, or maybe against the weight of everything he didn't know how to say. He looked like a man who had driven 3 hours without knowing if he would be welcome. He looked like a man who had spent 33 years wondering. He looked like me. I know I should have waited, he said. His voice was rough, uncertain. Your message said after Christmas. But when you texted that you were confronting them tonight, I couldn't just sit in Portland and wonder what was happening. I couldn't let you face that alone, even if I was just sitting in a parking lot. I couldn't stay away. How long have you been here? 2 hours, maybe more. I heard shouting through the windows. I almost came inside 3 times. Why didn't you? Because this was your moment, your truth to tell. I didn't have the right to take that from you. I stared at him. This stranger who was my father. This man who had been erased from my life before I could even remember him. I should have been angry that he showed up uninvited. I should have been cautious. He was still a stranger after all. Instead, I felt something unexpected. Relief. Someone was here. Someone who wanted to be here for me. Not because of obligation or guilt, because he chose to come. I walked down the porch steps toward him. Each step felt like crossing a bridge I had spent 33 years searching for. The snow was falling harder now, dusting his shoulders, catching in my hair. When I reached him, when I stood close enough to see my own eyes reflected in his face, I said the only thing I could think of. I have so many questions. I know. He nodded, his voice breaking slightly. I have questions too. About everything. About you. About what happened. About why I believed that letter for so many years instead of fighting harder. You believed it because my mother is a very convincing liar, and because Eleanor's handwriting was close enough to fool anyone who didn't know her well. He looked past me at the house. The windows still glowed with Christmas lights I had hung. The faint sound of chaos still echoed from inside. What happened in there? Everything. I told them about the DNA results, about the affair, about Eleanor's letter, and then my aunt played a recording of my mother confessing to forging the letter that drove you away. A recording? Eleanor made it. 4 years ago. She wanted evidence that couldn't be disputed. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that made my chest ache. I tried to find out. In 1992, I heard rumors about Lydia having a baby. I did the math. I called your grandmother. I wrote letters. I know, Margaret told me. My mother intercepted your letter and wrote back pretending to be Eleanor. She told you a paternity test had been done. That I wasn't yours. That you needed to stay away or Richard would press charges. I believed it. His voice cracked. God help me, I believed it. I wanted to fight, but a paternity denial and a threat of police involvement seemed so final. I thought I was protecting everyone by staying away. You were lied to. It wasn't your fault. It doesn't feel that way. It feels like I abandoned you. For 33 years, you grew up without me, without even knowing I existed. And I was 3 hours away, wondering if maybe I had a daughter somewhere who would never know my name. Headlights swept across the driveway. A car pulled up beside us, and Aunt Margaret stepped out. She saw Daniel and stopped, her face registering surprise, then understanding, then something like hope. Oh my God. You actually came. You told him where I was? I asked. I told the investigator to pass along your text. I didn't think he'd show up tonight. Daniel shrugged, a small, nervous movement. I've waited 33 years. I couldn't wait one more night. Margaret looked between us, her eyes filling with tears. Eleanor would have wanted this. She would have wanted you to meet him, Danielle. She spent the last years of her life trying to make this happen. I know. I felt my grandmother's presence like a warmth in my chest. She's the reason any of this is possible. Margaret took a deep breath. You're not going back to your apartment tonight, Danielle. Either of you. What? You just detonated a bomb in that house. You need somewhere safe, somewhere you can process everything without worrying about who might show up at your door. She looked at Daniel. I have a guest room and a couch, and more wine than any of us should drink alone on Christmas Eve. I glanced at Daniel. He glanced at me. Neither of us knew what to do, so we did the only thing that made sense. We followed Margaret home. Margaret's house was small and warm, nothing like the Foster mansion. Christmas decorations modest but genuine. A real tree, slightly crooked, covered with ornaments collected over decades. Mismatched furniture, books stacked on every surface. It's not much, Margaret said as she led us inside. It's everything, I replied, and I meant it. We sat in her living room until 2 a.m, talking, crying, laughing at the absurdity of it all. Daniel told stories about my mother as she had been at 23, passionate, wild, Nothing like the cold woman I had known. She made me feel like I could be anyone, he said, like the world was full of possibilities. I fell in love with her in about 3 days. What happened? She got scared. The wedding was planned. Both families expected it. Richard was safe and stable and everything her parents wanted for her. I was a junior accountant with big dreams and no money. She chose security over passion. He paused. I thought about fighting for her, showing up at the wedding, making some grand gesture. But she asked me not to. She said she had made her choice and I needed to respect it. So I did. I let her go. And then you found out about me. A year later. Rumors started circulating. Lydia Foster had a baby girl, 9 months after the wedding. I did the math 1,000 times. I called everyone I could think of. And when that letter came, the one I thought was from Eleanor, he trailed off. I stopped fighting. I convinced myself I was wrong. That the baby was Richard's after all. That I was seeing what I wanted to see. I moved to Chicago, then to Portland. I built a life. But I never stopped wondering. I never got married, never had other children. Some part of me always knew something was missing. I just didn't know it was you. Somewhere around midnight, the talking stopped. We sat in comfortable silence, the fire crackling, snow falling outside the window. Daniel looked at me across the room. I know we just met, but I need you to know something. What? I'm proud of you. For what you did tonight. For standing up to all of them. For demanding the truth even when it would have been easier to stay silent. Eleanor would have been proud too. I felt tears sting my eyes. She's the one who made it possible. Then I owe her everything. He paused, and someday I'll find a way to thank her. I went to the guest room around 2:30, exhausted but unable to sleep. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from Victoria. I hope you're happy. You destroyed everything. Bradley left. Mom's having a breakdown. Dad's not speaking. Merry Christmas. I read it once, then I deleted it. I didn't feel happy. But I didn't feel guilty either. For the first time in 33 years, I felt free. Christmas morning. I woke at 8:47 to the smell of coffee and something sweet baking. For a moment I forgot where I was. Then memory flooded back. The dinner, the confrontation, Daniel in the driveway. It wasn't a dream. It had really happened. I found Margaret in the kitchen making pancakes. Daniel sat at the table, looking like he hadn't slept but refusing to admit it. Merry Christmas, Margaret said. First one without the Foster circus. How does it feel? Quiet. Strangely quiet. That's what peace sounds like, sweetheart. You've just never heard it before. Daniel slid an envelope across the table toward me. I brought this. I've been carrying it for 3 months, waiting for the right moment. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a letter, handwritten, dated the day after he learned I might exist. I wrote this before I knew anything about you, he said. Before I knew your name, your face, your life. I just wrote what I would have said if I'd had the chance. I unfolded the paper and began to read. To the child I may never meet. If you exist, if you're out there somewhere, I want you to know I never left by choice. I never stopped wondering. And if I ever find you, if the universe ever gives me that chance, I promise I'll spend the rest of my life making up for every moment I missed. I couldn't finish. The tears came too fast. You wrote this before you knew me. I wrote it for the daughter I hoped you were. He reached across the table and took my hand. And you're more than I ever could have imagined. The fallout from Christmas Eve arrived in waves over the next 36 hours. My phone became a battlefield of texts and calls I mostly ignored. But I read every message. The picture they painted was devastating for the people who had spent 33 years lying. Victoria's messages grew increasingly unhinged. Christmas Day at 11, Bradley won't return my calls. His parents called off the engagement brunch. I hope you're satisfied. Christmas Day at 4, Mom hasn't stopped crying. She locked herself in her room. At 9, Dad's drinking. He finished an entire bottle of scotch. "This is your fault. Boxing Day at 2 in the morning, I always knew you'd destroy this family someday. I just didn't think you'd be so cold about it." Richard's messages were brief and broken. "Christmas Day at 3, Danielle, we need to talk, please." At 8, "I know I don't deserve your time, but there are things I never said." Boxing Day at 10, "Your mother and I are separating. I'm moving to a hotel. I thought you should know." Separating. After 33 years of lies, the truth had finally broken them apart. My mother sent nothing. Complete silence. Somehow that was worse than Victoria's rage. Relatives I barely knew suddenly remembered I existed. Cousin Meredith wanted to know if I was okay. Uncle Thomas said he was sorry. Aunt Patricia texted that Eleanor would be proud. People who had ignored me for 3 decades, suddenly reaching out, suddenly seeing me. I replied to none of them. What was there to say? On Boxing Day afternoon, sitting in Margaret's living room, my secret finally came out. Margaret was scrolling her phone, half watching the news. "Wait a minute. This designer everyone's talking about, Ember? They're saying she's Connecticut-based." She showed me the screen, a fashion blog headline. "Who is Ember? The mystery designer taking the industry by storm." My heart stopped. "You're looking at her," I said quietly. Margaret's phone nearly slipped from her hand. "What?" "Ember. Ember and Thread. That's me. I've been building it in secret for 7 years." Daniel leaned forward. "You're a fashion designer?" "I was supposed to be. Before I had to drop out. Before they took that dream away from me. So I built it back, piece by piece, in the spaces where they couldn't see. I showed them everything. My Instagram with 94,000 followers, my website, my portfolio, the Vogue feature request sitting in my inbox, the boutique deal waiting to be signed." "Why didn't you tell anyone?" Margaret breathed. "Because they would have found a way to destroy it. The only power I had was invisibility." Daniel stared at the screen, scrolling through my designs. "These are extraordinary." "You don't have to say that. I'm not being polite. I don't know fashion, but I know art, and this is art." He looked up at me with something new in his eyes. Pride. "My daughter is a designer, a real designer. I'm not famous or anything. You will be. Anyone who looks at this can see you will be." Margaret suddenly laughed. "Oh my God." "Victoria's engagement dress. What about it?" She spent weeks bragging about finding this amazing independent designer online. She paid $3,000 for a custom piece. Margaret turned her phone around. Victoria's Instagram post from October. The dress she wore to announce her engagement. My dress, Ember's work. She wore your dress to get engaged. She had no idea. The irony kept me warm on a lot of cold nights. Daniel had to leave the next morning. Work things to handle in Portland, even in retirement. But he made me a promise before he went. "I missed 33 years, Danielle. I can't get them back, but I can be here for the next 33. Or however many I have left. You don't owe me that. I'm not offering because I owe you. I'm offering because I want to know who you are. The woman you became despite everything they did. The designer who built an empire in secret. The daughter I never got to raise. I don't know how to do this. The family thing, I've never had one that wasn't broken. Then we'll figure it out together. Slow as you need, no pressure. What if I'm too damaged? What if I can't be what you want?" He turned to face me fully, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "You're already more than I ever hoped for. You don't have to be anything except yourself." I didn't plan what happened next. One moment I was standing apart, holding myself together. The next I was in his arms. He held me carefully, like something precious he was afraid to break. "I'm sorry," he whispered into my hair, "for every birthday, every Christmas, every moment I should have been there. It wasn't your fault, it doesn't matter, I'm still sorry." We stood on Margaret's porch until the cold drove us inside. And for the first time in my life, I understood what it felt like to have a father who wanted me. Not perfect, not healed, but wanting. and that was more than I had ever had before. Daniel left the next morning. We exchanged phone numbers, made plans to talk every Sunday, promised this was a beginning and not a goodbye. Margaret drove me back to my apartment and helped me carry in the bags I had never unpacked at my parents' house. "What will you do now?" she asked. "I don't know. Everything is different. I have a father who wants to know me, a career I don't have to hide anymore, a family that finally knows the truth, and Vogue wanting an interview." I had almost forgotten, the email still sitting in my inbox, the chance to reveal myself to the world. "Are you going to do it?" I looked around my small apartment, the space where I had built Ember in secret, stitch by stitch, dream by dream. "Yes, I think I am." Margaret smiled. "Eleanor would be so proud, I hope so, because I'm about to show them all exactly who they called useless." The new year was coming, and with it, a version of Danielle Foster the world had never seen. But first, there was one more thing I needed to face. My mother still hadn't called, and somehow her silence was louder than all of Victoria's rage combined. 1 month after I burned my family's lies to the ground, I stood in a Manhattan studio surrounded by my own creations and realized something extraordinary. I wasn't rebuilding my life. I was finally living it. January 24th, 4 weeks after Christmas Eve. I stood in the center of 1,200 square feet of possibility, fabric bolts lining the walls like a library of dreams. 3 industrial sewing machines hummed in the corner. 2 dress forms displayed works in progress. A cutting table stretched across the back wall, covered with patterns and chalk marks, and the evidence of 18-hour days. Natural light streamed through tall windows, illuminating everything I had built in secret and everything I was about to show the world. This was my studio. Ember and Thread's first real home. No longer working above a laundromat in Westbrook, hiding my passion in the hours between midnight and dawn. Eleanor's $50,000 had finally been put to its intended use. The Soho boutique deal was providing steady income. The Vogue interview was scheduled for next week. Everything I had built in darkness was about to step into the light. I ran my fingers across a finished gown hanging on the nearest form. Burgundy silk, hand-stitched beading that caught the light like scattered stars. This dress would be photographed, published, worn by someone who mattered, and everyone would know it came from the hands they had called useless. Everyone would see what they had tried to bury. The Phoenix collection was complete. 12 pieces, each representing a stage of transformation, from darkness to light, from ashes to fire, from invisible to undeniable. Every stitch was infused with the story I had lived. The first piece was called The Burial Gown, deep charcoal silk, almost black, with a structured bodice that felt like armor. The skirt pooled like shadows at the feet. It represented the years of being buried alive in my family's expectations, drowning in their cruelty while pretending I could still breathe. The sixth piece was The Awakening. A transitional design, gray to rose gold ombre, with delicate hand-embroidered feathers emerging from the hem like wings trying to unfold. The moment I realized I deserved more than the scraps they threw me. The final piece was Phoenix Rising, crimson and gold, layers of silk that moved like flames when the fabric caught the air. 300 hours of handwork visible in every detail, the dress I would wear to my own reveal, the dress that said I survived everything you did to me, and I turned it into art. Daniel had visited twice since Christmas. He sat in the corner of my studio during his last trip, watching me work for hours without interrupting. "You get this look when you're designing," he told me, "like you're somewhere else entirely. I am somewhere else. I'm in the world I'm creating." He nodded, understanding without needing explanation. That's what passion looks like. I remember it from when I was young, before life got complicated. I'm glad you found it again, Danielle. I'm glad you never let them take it from you. While I was finishing the final beading on Phoenix Rising, my laptop chimed with a new email. I almost ignored it. I had been ignoring most emails lately, too focused on the work to deal with the outside world. but the subject line caught my eye. Met Gala 2024 Designer Invitation. I stopped stitching, read the subject line again, opened the email with trembling fingers. Dear Ember, the message began. The Metropolitan Museum of Art's Costume Institute cordially invites you to attend the 2024 Met Gala as an emerging designer of exceptional promise. Your work has captured the attention of the fashion world, and we believe your presence would honor this year's celebration of transformation and reinvention. Please confirm your attendance by February 15th. The Met Gala, the most prestigious fashion event in the world. The night when designers, celebrities, and icons gathered to celebrate the art of clothing. And they wanted me. The girl from Westbrook who folded scarves at a boutique. The invisible daughter who was never supposed to amount to anything. They wanted Ember. They wanted me. I read the email 7 times before I believed it was real. Then I called Daniel. He answered on the second ring. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Everything's right. I just got invited to the Met Gala. Silence. Then a sound that might have been a laugh or might have been a sob. My daughter is going to the Met Gala. It felt strange to hear him say it. Strange and wonderful and right. Your daughter is going to the Met Gala. I wish Eleanor could see this. I think she can, I said softly. I think she's been watching all along. January 28th. The day of the Vogue interview. I arrived at One World Trade Center wearing a dress I had designed myself. Subtle, professional, unmistakably Ember. The receptionist's eyes widened when I gave my name. You're Ember? We've been dying to know who you are. The journalist was Miranda Chen, senior features editor. Sharp eyes, warm smile, a digital recorder placed precisely on the table between us. Everyone in fashion has been asking the same question for 2 years, she said. Who is Ember? My name is Danielle Foster. I'm 33 years old, and I've been designing in secret for 7 years. The interview lasted 2 hours. Miranda asked about my training. Parsons, I told her. I had to drop out junior year, family emergency. She asked about my inspiration, survival, transformation, proving that what others discard can become something beautiful. She asked why I had hidden for so long, because the people who should have supported me would have destroyed it if they'd known. I built Ember in the spaces they couldn't see, in the hours they thought I was sleeping, in the parts of myself they never bothered to look at. And now they can see exactly what I've become. I didn't expose every detail of my family's cruelty, but I didn't hide it either. I came from a family that didn't believe in me, a family that actively worked against my dreams. Some families lift you up. Mine tried to bury me. But you can't keep something buried forever. Eventually it grows through the cracks. Eventually it reaches the light. The photographer took pictures in my studio afterward. Me surrounded by my creations. The phoenix rising gown displayed prominently behind me. For the first time, my face would be attached to my work. Ember was no longer a mystery. Ember was me. After the interview, Miranda leaned forward, recorder off. Between us, she said quietly, this story is going to be huge. Secret designer reveals herself as the overlooked daughter of a prominent Connecticut family? That's headline gold. I'm not doing this for headlines. I know. That's what makes it such a good story. February 3rd. Publication day. I woke to my phone exploding. 417 notifications before I finished my first cup of coffee. The Vogue article had gone live at midnight. Headline: From Invisible to Iconic. The secret designer who built an empire in silence. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. My Instagram followers jumped from 94,000 to 300,000 in 12 hours. Feature requests poured in from LA, Harper's Bazaar, W Magazine. The Soho boutique reported selling out of Ember pieces by noon. Fashion Twitter erupted. Who is this woman, and how did we not know about her? The quotes people latched onto spread across social media like wildfire. I was told I was useless so many times I started to believe it. Ember was my way of proving to myself more than anyone that they were wrong. You don't need permission to become who you're meant to be. You just need to start, even if you have to do it in secret. The people who tried to bury me are the reason I learned to bloom in the dark. The article mentioned my Connecticut background, mentioned the prominent family who had dismissed me. It didn't name them specifically. I had requested that. But anyone in Westbrook who read it would know exactly who I meant. The calls began immediately. Cousin Meredith. Oh my God, Danielle, I just read the Vogue article. I had no idea. Uncle Thomas, I always knew you were special. We're so proud. Random relatives who hadn't spoken to me in years, suddenly discovering I existed. I let most of them go to voicemail. One text stood out from the flood. Victoria, we need to talk. I saw the article. Call me. Not congratulations, not I'm sorry, just, we need to talk. Like I owed her something. I didn't respond. Small towns talk. Westbrook was no exception. By February 4th, everyone knew. Mrs. Chen called me directly from the boutique. Honey, I always knew you were something special. The way you touched fabric, the way you saw what others missed. You never said anything. You weren't ready to hear it. But I'm saying it now. I'm proud of you. And I want to display a sign in my window. Ember and thread designer worked here. Is that okay? I laughed through my tears. I'd like that. Word of the Foster family fallout reached me through Margaret. She called with updates I hadn't asked for, but needed to hear. Lydia had seen the article and locked herself in her bedroom for 2 days. Richard had read it at his hotel and called Margaret to ask if it was true. Victoria had posted a cryptic Instagram message. When family wounds become public spectacle, 400 comments underneath, asking what she meant. The town's reaction was everything I had imagined and nothing I had expected. Former teachers reached out. We always knew you had talent. High school classmates suddenly remembered my name. Wait, that quiet girl? That's Ember? The local newspaper requested an interview. Westbrook's own fashion star. People who had ignored me for 33 years, suddenly desperate for a piece of my success. I didn't gloat. I didn't rub it in. I simply continued. Let my work speak. Let my success answer every question they had never bothered to ask. Margaret called again 2 days later. Richard and Lydia's separation is official. She's staying in the house. He's renting an apartment downtown. That was fast. 33 years of lies tend to collapse quickly once they're exposed. She paused. Do you feel bad? Do I? I considered the question honestly. Number 1, I feel free. Victoria called 5 times before I finally answered. February 7th. I picked up more out of curiosity than obligation. Danielle, finally! I've been trying to reach you for days. I've been busy. The Vogue feature and all. I read the article. It's wow. I mean, I always knew you were creative. Did you? Of course. Remember when you made that dress for my senior prom? I still have pictures somewhere. I remembered. Victoria had worn the dress, taken credit for finding it at a boutique, never mentioned I had made it. I remember. Well, I was thinking. Now that you're, successful. Maybe we could reconnect. I know some people who would love to meet you, industry people. I could introduce you to some really important contacts. Victoria, stop. What? I don't need your connections. I don't need your introductions. I built this without you, without any of you. I'm trying to support you. No, you're trying to attach yourself to my success, the same way you attached yourself to my failure for 33 years. I let the silence stretch. Victoria didn't fill it. You wore my dress to your engagement party, the one Bradley walked out of. More silence. You've been praising Ember's work for 2 years online. You had no idea it was mine. So, no, Victoria. We're not going to reconnect. You had 33 years to be my sister. You chose to be my bully instead. Her voice turned cold. You think you're so much better than us now? No, I think I've always been exactly who I am. The difference is, now everyone else can see it too. Mom was right about you. Goodbye, Victoria. I hung up. The satisfaction lasted about 10 seconds. Then came the hollow feeling. the grief for the sister I had never really had. Daniel called that evening, somehow sensing I needed him. Rough day? Victoria tried to pretend the last 33 years didn't happen. How did that go? I hung up on her. Good. Some bridges aren't worth rebuilding. They were rotten from the start. Richard's email arrived on February 10th. Subject line, "From your father, please read." 3 pages long. I almost deleted it unread. But something made me open it. The apology was lengthy, detailed, seemingly genuine. He acknowledged every failure, the silence, the complicity, the cruelty by omission. "I let your mother define how we treated you. I was too weak to stand up for you and too proud to admit I was wrong. I saw your article. I saw what you've become. And I realized that everything I thought I knew was backwards. You succeeded not because of us, but in spite of us. And that makes your achievement even more remarkable." His request was simple. "I don't expect forgiveness. I haven't earned it. But if you ever want to talk, not as father and daughter, we lost that chance long ago. But as two people trying to understand what went wrong, I would welcome it." I'm proud of you, Danielle. I know I have no right to be. But I am. I read the email 3 times. Showed it to Daniel during our Sunday call. "What do you think I should do?" "That's not my choice to make. But I'll support whatever you decide." I drafted a reply, deleted it, drafted another. The response I finally sent was 2 sentences. "I received your email. I'm not ready to respond, but I'm not saying never. Give me time." It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. It was a door left slightly ajar. Whether I would ever walk through it, I didn't yet know. 2 days later, an envelope arrived. Not an email. Physical mail. Heavy cream cardstock, hand-calligraphed address. Inside was an invitation to a private showing at the Portland Museum of Art. Daniel's handwriting on the enclosed note made my heart skip. "Dear Danielle, my retirement wasn't just about leaving accounting. It was about finally pursuing what I love. Art curation. I've spent the last year organizing an exhibition called Found: Art of Second Chances. The opening is February 20th. I would be honored if you would attend. I've reserved a space for one of your pieces if you're willing to loan it. There's also someone I'd like you to meet. Someone who knew your mother and me, back when everything began. Someone who might have answers to questions even I can't answer. Come to Portland. See what I've built. And maybe we can discover the rest of this story together. With love, Daniel." Then, in smaller handwriting beneath his signature, a single word in parentheses. "Dad, if that's okay." I held the invitation for a long time. Dad. He had written Dad. I didn't know if I was ready for that word yet. It still felt new, fragile, like something that might break if I held it too tightly. But I knew one thing for certain. I was going to Portland. I was going to see what he had built. And I was going to find out what other secrets this story still held. The train to Portland took 4 hours. 4 hours to think about the word Dad and whether I was ready to say it out loud. February 19th, the day before Daniel's exhibition opening. I packed a small bag, enough for 3 days, and told no one except Margaret where I was going. "Are you nervous?" she asked as she drove me to the station. Terrified. But I've spent 33 years not knowing who I am. I can't spend another day avoiding the answers. She hugged me on the platform, longer than usual. "Eleanor would be so proud of you. For all of this. For everything you're becoming." I hope so. I really hope so. The train pulled away from the station, and I watched Connecticut become Massachusetts, become New Hampshire, become Maine. The landscape changed outside my window. Bare trees giving way to snow-covered fields. Small towns flickering past like memories. I kept my phone in my bag, deliberately ignored. Just my thoughts and the letter Daniel had sent with the invitation. Not the invitation itself. Another letter that arrived 2 days later. Handwritten, 8 pages, his careful script filling every line. "I want you to know everything before you arrive," he had written. so you can decide if you still want to come. I had read it 7 times already. I was about to read it again. I unfolded the pages carefully. The paper was soft now, worn from handling. My dearest Danielle, the letter began. I've started this letter 15 times. Each time I get lost trying to find the right words. Maybe there are no right words for what I need to tell you. Maybe all I can offer is the truth, ugly and incomplete as it is. Let me start at the beginning. The summer of 1990, when I was 25 years old and stupid enough to believe that love could conquer anything. Daniel's story unfolded across the pages. He was a junior accountant at Hartford Textile Company. Fresh out of college, idealistic, hungry for a life that meant something. Lydia was the receptionist. Beautiful, sharp-tongued, magnetic in a way he had never encountered before. She laughed like the world was a joke, only she understood, he wrote. I was lost from the first moment I saw her. I knew she was engaged to Richard Foster. Everyone knew. But I told myself I didn't care. I told myself love was more important than propriety. I told myself a lot of things that summer. Most of them were lies I needed to believe. The affair lasted 3 months. Stolen moments in empty conference rooms, secret meetings at a motel outside of town, promises neither of them could keep. She said she would leave him. She said she just needed time. I believed her because I needed to. Because the alternative was accepting that I was just a distraction. A summer fling before she settled into the safe life she had chosen. The letter continued, and each word painted a picture I had never seen. September 1990, 1 month before the wedding. Daniel gave Lydia an ultimatum, him or Richard. Choose. She cried. She said she loved me. She said she couldn't leave. I asked her why not. She said because Richard is safe, and you're not. They met one final time, the night before Lydia married Richard. I begged her not to go through with it. I offered her everything I had, which wasn't much, a small apartment, a modest salary, a future full of uncertainty but also full of love. She kissed me goodbye and said some loves aren't meant to survive. I watched her walk away, and I thought that was the end of us. He didn't know then that she was already carrying me, didn't know that their last night together had created something neither of them expected. If I had known, he wrote, the ink slightly smudged as if he had paused there for a long time. God, Danielle, if I had known, nothing could have kept me away. I would have fought armies. I would have torn that house apart. I would have done anything to be your father. But I didn't know. And I've spent 33 years living with that ignorance. The next 2 years were the longest of my life, the letter continued. I tried to forget her, tried to move on, dated other women, threw myself into work. But something kept pulling at me. A feeling I couldn't name. A sense that something important had been left unfinished. In early 1991, Daniel heard rumors at the office. Lydia Foster had a baby girl, born in March, 8 months after the wedding. I did the math 1,000 times, he wrote. I knew, in my bones, I knew, but knowing and proving are different things. He called Eleanor first, the only person he thought might tell him the truth. Your grandmother was kind to me, Danielle. She didn't lie outright. She just said it wasn't her truth to tell. Then he wrote to Lydia directly, asked for a meeting, asked for honesty, asked if the child was his. The response came 2 weeks later. Eleanor's handwriting, or so he thought. It said a paternity test had been done. The baby was Richard's. I was mistaken. It said if I contacted the family again, Richard would file harassment charges. It said to forget Lydia, forget the baby, forget everything. I believed it. He had underlined those 3 words so hard the pen nearly tore the paper. God help me, I believed it. I requested a transfer to the Chicago office. Left Connecticut within a month. Spent the next 30 years telling myself I had imagined the whole thing. I dated other women, never married, never had children. Something always felt missing. Some part of me knew, but I couldn't face it. Facing it meant admitting I had given up, that I had let a letter, a single piece of paper, keep me from my own daughter. In 2019, everything changed. A DNA database flagged a distant cousin connection. Daniel started investigating, found records, hired a researcher. And then I found you, Danielle Marie Foster. Born March 15, 1991, 9 months after my last night with your mother. I realized then that the letter I received wasn't from Eleanor. The handwriting was close, but not quite right. Your mother had forged it. She had stolen my chance to know you, and your grandmother had spent 28 years trying to make it right. The final pages of Daniel's letter were the hardest to read. I won't pretend to understand what you've been through, he wrote. I can't imagine growing up in that house, being treated the way you were, never knowing why. But I can tell you this. If I had known about you, nothing would have stopped me. Not Richard's threats, not Lydia's manipulation, not 1,000 forged letters. I would have fought for you. I would have been there for every birthday, every scraped knee, every first day of school. I would have told you every single day that you were wanted, that you were loved, that you were never, ever useless. His regrets filled an entire page. I regret believing that letter without fighting harder. I regret letting 30 years pass without demanding answers. I regret every moment you spent thinking no one wanted you, when I was 3 states away, wanting you desperately without knowing you existed. His hopes filled the last page. I'm not asking you to call me Dad. That's a title I haven't earned. I'm not asking you to forgive your mother. That's your choice alone. I'm only asking for a chance to know the woman you've become, a chance to be something to you, even if we have to invent what that something is. There's someone I want you to meet in Portland. Her name is Clara. She was Eleanor's best friend for 50 years. She knows things even I don't know, things your grandmother never put in writing. Come to the exhibition. See what I've built with my second chance. And maybe together we can find the rest of this story. Whatever you decide, know this. I've waited 33 years to say these words. I love you, Danielle. I've loved you since before I knew your name. Daniel. I folded the letter carefully and looked out the window at the snow-covered landscape. I'm coming, Dad, I whispered to my reflection. I'm finally coming. Portland in February was cold and beautiful and foreign, a city I had never visited, holding a father I had never known. The train station was small and intimate, nothing like Grand Central, and Daniel was waiting on the platform. He looked older than he had on Christmas Eve, tired, nervous, hopeful. He held a single flower in his hand. Lavender, like Eleanor used to grow. You came. His voice cracked on the words. Did you think I wouldn't? I thought you might change your mind. I wouldn't have blamed you. I'm done running from the truth, whatever it is. He drove me to the museum in his modest car, nothing flashy, nothing expensive. We made small talk at first. The train ride, the weather, the city, neither of us ready to dive deep. Not yet. The Portland Museum of Art was smaller than the Met, but warm and welcoming. A sign at the entrance read, Found, Art of Second Chances, curated by Daniel Mercer. Inside, paintings and sculptures and photographs filled the galleries, all centered on themes of loss and recovery. Things found after being lost, people reconnecting after years apart, beauty emerging from broken places. This is what you've been doing since retirement? I asked. This is what I've always wanted to do. I just needed 30 years to find the courage. In the final room, a space had been reserved in the center. An empty display with a card reading, Reserved for Phoenix Rising by Ember and Thread, on loan from the artist. I wasn't sure you'd bring it, Daniel said. I wasn't sure either. But it belongs here. It's about the same thing, isn't it? Rising from what tried to bury you. A woman stood in the corner of the gallery watching us. White hair, sharp eyes, elegant posture despite her age. She walked toward us slowly, leaning on a cane. Daniel, she said, is this her? Is this Eleanor's granddaughter? Clara, meet Danielle. Danielle, this is Clara, your grandmother's oldest friend. Clara's eyes filled with tears as she took my hands. I've been waiting a long time to meet you, child. Eleanor talked about you constantly. She did? You were the light of her life, the only thing she was truly proud of in that family. Clara had known Eleanor for 53 years, since they were young mothers together, raising children, keeping each other sane. Eleanor told her everything over the years, the affair, the pregnancy, the forged letter, but also something more, something Eleanor had never put in writing. Your grandmother tried to reach Daniel in 1995, Clara said, 4 years after you were born. She did? Daniel's voice cracked. Lydia found out, intercepted the letter, threatened to have Eleanor committed if she ever tried again. That's when Eleanor started keeping records, building evidence, preparing for the day when someone would finally be strong enough to use it. Eleanor's original plan was to tell me when I turned 18, give me the choice as an adult. What stopped her? Your mother found out, threatened to move the family away, cut Eleanor off completely. Your grandmother chose to stay close to you rather than tell the truth. She chose proximity over honesty. She regretted it every day, but she couldn't bear to lose you. Clara reached into her bag and pulled out a small velvet pouch. Eleanor gave me this 30 years ago, said to hold it until the time was right. Inside was a ring, simple gold band, slightly tarnished with age, an inscription on the inside, to L, forever, D, 1990. Daniel gave this to your mother the night before her wedding, Clara explained. She kept it hidden for 3 years. Eleanor found it and took it for safekeeping. She gave it to me for protection. Said someday it should go to the person it was really meant for. Clara pressed the ring into my palm. Not the woman who betrayed his love, but the child that love created. I stared at the ring, evidence of a love story I had never been told, a promise that was broken before I was born. He really loved her. He loved the woman he thought she was, Clara said softly, before she became what she is now. That evening, we sat in Daniel's small craftsman house near the waterfront. We had dinner, talked for hours, looked through old photographs Clara had kept. I was beginning to feel something I had rarely experienced: belonging. Then my phone rang at 9 o'clock. Mom on the screen. First time she had called since Christmas. 6 weeks of silence, and now this. I should probably take this, I said. Daniel nodded. Whatever you need to do. Danielle. Finally. I've been trying to reach you. Her voice was sharp, controlled. No, you haven't. This is your first call in 6 weeks. I needed time to process. You understand. I understand that you've had 33 years to tell me the truth. You chose not to. I'm your mother, Danielle. Doesn't that mean anything? It means you gave birth to me. It doesn't mean you loved me. I did love you. In my own way. Your own way was cruelty. Your own way was erasure. Your own way was making me believe I was worthless for 33 years. I made mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. Mistakes are accidents. What you did was deliberate. For 33 years, I need you to come home. Her voice shifted, became pleading. To talk, to work this out. There's nothing to work out. You owe me a chance to explain. I don't owe you anything. Silence on the line. Then harder. I am your mother. You owe me forgiveness. No, I don't. I don't owe you my silence. I don't owe you my pain. I don't owe you my presence at tables where I was never welcome. Danielle. Goodbye, Lydia. Don't call me again. I hung up. My hands were shaking, but my voice had been steady. Daniel sat beside me in silence, not touching, just present. How do you feel? I don't know. Empty, relieved, sad. All of those things can be true at once. Is it wrong that I don't feel guilty? No, it's healthy. You just set a boundary with someone who never respected a single one. That night, alone in Daniel's guest room, I pulled out Eleanor's letter for the first time in weeks. Not the DNA results, not the evidence, just the final page. The postscript she had written 1 week before she died. I read it by the light of a small lamp, the ring Daniel had once given my mother sitting on the nightstand beside me. P.S., my darling girl. I need you to remember something, in case everything else fades. You were not a mistake. You were not a punishment. You were not something to be ashamed of. You were a miracle I got to love for 30 years. The bravest, kindest, most talented person I've ever known. Not in spite of what you endured, but because of how you survived it. Your mother's choices are not your story. Her shame is not your inheritance. You are allowed to be happy. You are allowed to be loved. You are allowed to take up space in a room without apologizing for breathing. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you better. I'm sorry I stayed silent. I'm sorry I chose fear over courage for so long. But I'm not sorry I loved you. That was the easiest choice I ever made. Fly, my little phoenix. Build your empire. Wear your success like armor. And when they finally see what you've become, don't let them take credit for surviving what they did to you. Live, sweetheart. That's the only revenge that matters. All my love, forever and after, Grandma Eleanor. I held the letter to my chest and cried. Not the broken tears I had cried so many times before. These were different, cleansing, like rain after a drought. I found him, Grandma, I whispered to the empty room. I found Daniel. I found the truth, and I found myself. Somewhere I knew she heard me. Tomorrow I would go home, not to Westbrook. That was never home, but to New York, to my studio, to the life I had built from nothing. And for the first time in 33 years, I knew exactly who I was. 2 months after I walked out of my mother's house on Christmas Eve, I stood backstage at New York Fashion Week and realized something that would have been impossible to believe a year ago. I was exactly where I was meant to be. February 28th, the final day of Fashion Week. Backstage chaos surrounded me at the Spring Studios venue, models in various states of preparation, stylists pinning last-minute adjustments, makeup artists adding final touches, the hum of anticipation and nerves and barely contained excitement filling every corner of the room. And me in the center of it all. Not hiding, not invisible, not apologizing for taking up space. Ember and Thread's first official runway show was about to begin. 12 pieces, 12 transformations. The Phoenix Collection, born from everything I had survived and everything I had become. I wore a gown I had designed myself. Deep burgundy silk with hand-stitched beading that caught the light like scattered stars. Eleanor's locket hung around my neck, warm against my skin. The people who mattered were in the audience. Daniel sat in the front row, wearing a suit he had bought specifically for this occasion. Aunt Margaret sat beside him, clutching a tissue she had already used twice. Mrs. Chen from the boutique had flown up from Connecticut, her eyes wide with pride. Clara had sent flowers. Lavender, of course, with a note that read, "Eleanor is watching." She always knew. The people who weren't there didn't matter anymore. Lydia, uninvited and unmentioned. Richard, his email still unanswered. Victoria, blocked on every platform, erased as thoroughly as she had once tried to erase me. The stage manager's voice crackled through my earpiece. 5 minutes to show time. I took a breath, smoothed my hands over my dress, and prepared to show the world what the useless daughter had built in the dark. The lights dimmed. The music swelled. A haunting piano piece that built slowly toward something powerful. The first model stepped onto the runway wearing the burial gown. Charcoal silk, catching the light like smoke. Gasps rippled through the audience. Each piece told part of the story. The silence in gray wool, structured and suffocating. The crack with its first hint of color bleeding through the seams. The awakening in rose gold emerging from shadow. The discovery with bold patterns and hidden messages stitched into the lining. The confrontation with sharp angles and fierce silhouettes. The release with flowing fabrics and movement and freedom. Fashion editors scribbled furiously in their notebooks. Phones raised everywhere, capturing every moment. Whispers spreading through the crowd. This is the secret designer, the one from the Vogue article? The story added weight to every stitch. Then came the finale, Phoenix Rising. The final model paused at the end of the runway, crimson and gold, layers of silk that moved like flames, 300 hours of handwork visible in every detail. The audience rose to their feet. Applause thundered through the venue. Tradition demanded the designer take a bow. I stepped onto the runway, heart pounding against my ribs. I saw Daniel wiping his eyes, Margaret openly sobbing, strangers standing, clapping, celebrating work they had never seen before today. Work that had been created in secret, in silence, in the spaces no one thought to look. As I reached the end of the runway, I saw a face I didn't expect. Bradley, Victoria's ex-fiancé, standing near the back. He caught my eye, nodded once, mouthed the words, "You did it." I nodded back. Some people surprised you, some people grew. The after-party was small and intimate. Not the official Fashion Week celebrations, but a gathering at my studio. Just the people who mattered. Champagne I had bought myself with money I had earned myself. Daniel stood in the center of the room, glass raised. "I missed 33 years," he said. 33 birthdays, 33 Christmases, 33 chances to tell my daughter I was proud of her. His voice cracked. "But I'm here now. And I have never been prouder of anyone in my entire life. To Danielle, to Ember, to the phoenix who rose from ashes none of us knew existed." Glasses clinked, tears fell, laughter followed. Margaret pulled me aside later and pressed something into my hand. "Eleanor's thimble, the one from the sewing room. I found it when I was cleaning out her cottage," she said. "She would have wanted you to have it for tonight." My fingers closed around the worn silver. 4 generations of women who had sewn their dreams into fabric. I was the 5th, the one who had made it. Mrs. Chen found me near the dessert table. "I'm putting a sign in my window tomorrow," she announced. "Ember and Thread Designer worked here. You watch. I'll have tourists lining up. I still can't believe you never told me. Would you have believed me? Honestly? No, I thought I knew you. You knew who I had to be. Now you know who I actually am." March 1st. Moving day. A real apartment now. Not a studio above a laundromat in Westbrook. 2 bedrooms, high ceilings, natural light streaming through tall windows. A dedicated workspace for designing. Room to breathe, room to grow, room to exist without apologizing. I painted the walls soft gray, the color of possibility. Eleanor's vintage Singer sewing machine sat in the corner, restored and working. Photographs lined one wall, Eleanor and me at my 8th birthday party, Daniel at his exhibition opening, Margaret at Fashion Week. Not a single photo of Lydia or Richard or Victoria, not erasure, just truth. These were the people who mattered now. The last box I unpacked was small and wooden. Inside lay Eleanor's letters, the DNA results, the photograph of my mother and Daniel from the summer of 1990. Evidence of the past I had survived. I didn't throw it away. Some things needed to be remembered. But I didn't display it either. The past had its place. It wasn't the living room. I set up the 2nd bedroom carefully. Daniel's room, I had started calling it in my head. For when he visited, which was becoming more frequent, he was planning to move closer. Not next door, not in my pocket, he had said, just closer. I'd like that, I had told him, and I meant it. On the refrigerator, held by a magnet, the Met Gala invitation. May 6th, just 2 months away. The dress was already designed. Emerald green with Eleanor's locket worked into the neckline. The girl they had called useless was going to the biggest fashion event in the world. The irony never stopped being satisfying. That evening, I sat by the window with the city lights glittering below. I pulled out Eleanor's letter. The paper was soft now, nearly falling apart at the creases. I had read it so many times that the ink was starting to fade where my fingers had touched it most. But I needed to read it one more time. The postscript. The words she had written 1 week before she died. P.S. My darling girl, I need you to remember something in case everything else fades. You were not a mistake. You were not a punishment. You were not something to be ashamed of. You were a miracle I got to love for 30 years. The bravest, kindest, most talented person I've ever known, not in spite of what you endured, but because of how you survived it. Your mother's choices are not your story. Her shame is not your inheritance. Her cruelty is not your legacy. You are allowed to be happy. You are allowed to be loved. You are allowed to take up space in a room without apologizing for breathing. Whoever your father is, wherever he is, he doesn't define you either. You are already whole. You always were. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you better. I'm sorry I chose silence when I should have chosen truth. I'm sorry for every moment you spent believing their lies about who you are. But I'm not sorry I loved you. That was the easiest choice I ever made. Fly, my little phoenix. Build your empire. Wear your success like armor. And when they finally see what you've become, don't let them take credit for surviving what they did to you. Live, sweetheart. That's the only revenge that matters. All my love, forever and after. Grandma Eleanor. I held the letter to my chest and cried. Not the broken, hopeless tears I had cried so many times before. These were different. Cleansing. Like rain after a drought. I did it, Grandma, I whispered. I found Daniel. I built my empire. I lived. The foster family was unraveling. Word reached me through Margaret, who kept me informed without me asking. Richard and Lydia's divorce proceedings had begun. The house was for sale. 33 years of marriage collapsing under the weight of lies that could no longer be sustained. Richard had moved to a small apartment. He was attending therapy, Margaret said. He had written 3 more emails I hadn't answered yet. Lydia remained in denial. She told relatives that I had been manipulated by outsiders, that I had always been troubled, that none of this was her fault. No one believed her anymore. Victoria had lost her job. The scandal from Christmas Eve had spread through Connecticut social circles and eventually reached her law firm. They suggested she take a leave of absence. Last I heard, she had moved to California. We would probably never speak again. I was okay with that. Some relationships weren't worth saving. Some bridges were rotten from the start. Margaret had visited New York 3 times since Christmas. She was talking about moving closer. To be near real family for once, she said. We had dinner together every Sunday she was in town. The aunt who had been silent for 32 years had become the family I never knew I needed. Daniel and I talked every Sunday. He visited twice a month, staying in his room in my apartment. We were learning each other slowly, favorite foods, pet peeves, the small details that families accumulate over years of knowing each other. He had started calling me sweetheart, the same word Eleanor had always used. I had started calling him Dad, quietly, carefully, but meaning it more each time. March 3rd. Our Sunday phone call. Daniel's voice was warm through the speaker. How's the unpacking? Slow. I keep getting distracted by old photos. Find anything good? Eleanor's recipe book, the one Mom said was lost years ago. She hid it from you? She hid everything from me. But I found it anyway. I always found my way back to the things I loved. Are you happy, Danielle? Really happy? I considered the question seriously. I'm getting there. I'm not sure I know what happy feels like yet. I've spent so long surviving that I forgot what it means to actually live. But I'm learning. That's enough. That's more than enough. He paused. I found an apartment. In Brooklyn. 20 minutes from you. You're really moving? I missed 33 years. I'm not missing anymore. Dad. The word still felt new. Precious. I know, but let me do this. Let me be your father, even if I'm 33 years late. We have time, I said. We have the rest of our lives. Then let's not waste another minute. Deal, deal. I love you, sweetheart. I love you too, Dad. I hung up, and the word echoed in my empty apartment. Dad. I had a dad. A real one who wanted me. I sat at my desk that night, surrounded by everything I had built. The phoenix rising gown hung on a mannequin nearby, back from the runway. Eleanor's thimble sat on my desk, warm from my skin. I opened my laptop and began to write. Not a letter, not a design, a reflection. For myself, for Eleanor, for anyone who had ever been told they were worthless and made the mistake of believing it. If you're still here, if you've stayed with me until the end, I want you to know something. I spent 33 years believing I was useless, a mistake, a disappointment, not good enough, not talented enough, not worthy of love or success or even a seat at the family table. I believed it because the people who were supposed to love me said it so often that it became my truth. I was wrong. And if you believe those things about yourself, if someone has spent years telling you that you're not enough, I need you to hear this. They're wrong too. The people who hurt us don't get to define us. Their cruelty is a reflection of their own fear, their own shame, their own inadequacy. It was never about us. It was always about them. You don't owe your silence to people who hurt you. You don't owe forgiveness to people who never apologized. You don't owe your presence to tables where you were never welcome. Build your own table. Sow your own future. Rise from whatever ashes they left you in. My grandmother told me that living well is the only revenge that matters. She was right. Not because success punishes them. It doesn't. They'll never understand what they lost. But because success proves something more important. They were wrong. They were always wrong. And you were always enough. I found my truth. I found my father. I found myself. And wherever you are, whatever you're going through, I hope you find yours too. That's my story. All of it. The ugly parts, the painful parts, the beautiful parts that grew from the wreckage. If it meant something to you, if you saw yourself anywhere in these words, I'd love to hear from you. Tell me in the comments. Have you ever been the invisible one in your family? Have you ever had to build something in secret because the people around you wouldn't understand? Have you ever had to choose between the family you were born into and the person you were meant to become? And if you know someone who needs to hear this story, a friend, a sister, a daughter who's been told she's not enough, please share it with them. Sometimes knowing we're not alone is the first step toward rising. If you want more stories like this one, stories about survival, about truth, about finding yourself when everyone else has given up on you, hit that subscribe button and stay with me. I promise there are more phoenixes out there, and I'm going to keep telling their stories. Thank you for staying with me until the end. Thank you for listening. Thank you for believing that invisible daughters can become something extraordinary. And to my grandmother, wherever you are, I lived, Grandma. Just like you told me to. I lived. That's everything. I'm finally holding the pen. And the next chapter? That one's mine to write.